Hey everyone. Tonight, we're diving deep into the most mysterious, haunting, and utterly terrifying secrets that our oceans hold. From ancient creatures that shouldn't exist, to ships that vanish without explanation. From underwater cities lost to time to sound so horrifying, they've kept scientists awake at night. The ocean covers over 70% of our planet, yet we've explored less than 5% of it. That means there's a whole world down there waiting in the darkness, filled with mysteries that would make your worst nightmares seem like pleasant bedtime stories. So before we descend into these watery depths together, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy diving into the unknown with me. And let me know in the comments where you're listening from and what time it is for you. It's always fascinating to see who's brave enough to join us on these midnight journeys into the abyss. Now dim the lights, maybe grab a warm blanket, and let's ease into tonight's exploration of the ocean's darkest secrets. When you think of the ocean, you might picture sunny beaches, gentle waves, and maybe a dolphin or two jumping playfully in the distance. But tonight, we're going somewhere else entirely. We're going to the places where light has never touched, where pressure would crush you in milliseconds, and where things live that evolution seems to have forgotten about. The ocean isn't just water. It's a three-dimensional alien world that exists right here on our planet, filled with creatures so bizarre they look like they were designed by someone having a particularly vivid nightmare. This is a realm where fish have their own built-in flashlights, where giant squids battle whales in epic underwater wars, and where the very geography itself seems to shift and change like a living thing. Picture this. You're floating on the surface of the ocean on a calm night. The water is black glass, reflecting stars you can barely make out. But beneath you, stretching down for miles and miles, is an abyss so deep that if you dropped Mount Everest into some parts of it, the peak wouldn't even come close to reaching the surface. And in that darkness, things are moving. Things are hunting. Things are waiting. The ocean doesn't care about your fears or your comfort zone. It operates by rules so alien to our land-dwelling minds that even our most advanced science struggles to understand them. Down there in the deepest trenches, the pressure is over 1,000 times greater than what you experience sitting in your room right now. It would be like having the weight of 50 jumbo jets pressing down on every square inch of your body, and yet life thrives there. Not just survives, thrives. Creatures that have never seen sunlight, that have never felt warmth, that exist in the world of eternal midnight and crushing cold. They've adapted to conditions so extreme that they might as well be living on another planet entirely. Some of them glow with their own eerie light, creating constellations of bioluminescence in the absolute darkness. Others have evolved to be transparent, like living ghosts drifting through the water. But here's what really keeps oceanographers up at night. We keep finding new things down there, new species, new ecosystems, new mysteries that challenge everything we thought we knew about life on Earth. Every deep-sea expedition brings back footage of creatures that look like they crawled out of someone's fever dream. And for every new discovery, 10 more questions arise. The ocean has been keeping secrets for billions of years, and it's not about to give them up easily. It guards its mysteries jealously, hidden beneath miles of dark water and crushing pressure. But tonight, we're going to dive down into that alien world and explore some of the most spine-tingling, sleep-disrupting, absolutely fascinating mysteries that lurk in the depths. Because if you think you know what's scary, wait until you hear about what's been living in the deepest parts of our planet's oceans, right beneath our feet, all this time. And the really unsettling part. We're just beginning to scratch the surface. Let's start our journey in a place that sounds like it came straight out of a horror movie, the Mariana Trench. Located in the western Pacific Ocean, this underwater canyon is the deepest known part of Earth's oceans, plunging down over 36,000 feet below sea level. To put that in perspective, if you could somehow drain all the water out of the Mariana Trench and drop Mount Everest into it, the mountain's peak would still be over a mile underwater. The Mariana Trench isn't just deep, it's alien. The pressure down there is so intense that it would instantly crush any human body into something resembling chunky soup. The temperature hovers just above freezing, and there's no sunlight, no warmth, no comfort of any kind. It's as close to visiting another planet as you can get without leaving Earth. And yet, life finds a way even in this hellish environment. Scientists have discovered bizarre creatures living in the trench that defy our understanding of what life needs to survive. There are fish with transparent skin, crustaceans that can withstand the crushing pressure, and bacteria that thrive in conditions that would kill anything else. But what truly makes the Mariana Trench one of the ocean's most unsettling mysteries isn't what we found there, it's what we haven't. In 2016, researchers lowered hydrophones into the trench to record the ambient sounds of the deepest place on Earth. What they captured was a cacophony of strange noises, clicks, moans, and something that sounded disturbingly like metallic scraping. Some of these sounds have been identified as coming from known sea creatures or geological processes, but others remain completely unexplained. Just imagine for a moment being alone in a tiny submersible miles below the surface, surrounded by absolute darkness and hearing those unexplained sounds echoing around you, tapping on your hull, scraping along the outside of your vessel, and knowing that whatever is making those sounds has evolved to survive in conditions that would instantly kill you if your submersible's hull cracked even slightly. But the mysteries of the Mariana Trench don't end with unexplained sounds. In recent years, explorers have reported seeing strange lights moving through the darkness down there. Lights that don't match any known bioluminescent pattern from recognized creatures. Lights that seem to move with purpose. Intelligence even. Official explanations range from undiscovered species to strange reflections caused by the extreme conditions. But some researchers who spent time down there have whispered other theories. Theories they don't include in their official reports. Because who would believe them? And who would fund further research if they admitted what they thought they saw down there in the crushing darkness? Now let's move on to another ocean mystery that has puzzled sailors and scientists for centuries, the Bermuda Triangle. This roughly triangular area between Miami, Bermuda, and Puerto Rico has become infamous for the number of ships and aircraft that have disappeared within its boundaries. Since the mid-19th century, dozens of vessels and aircraft have vanished in this region under mysterious circumstances. Many disappearing without distress calls, without debris, without any trace at all. It's as if they simply ceased to exist the moment they entered those waters. One of the most famous cases is the disappearance of Flight 19 in 1945. 5 Navy bombers took off from Fort Lauderdale, Florida, on a routine training mission. The squadron's leader reported strange compass readings and disorientation, saying, "Everything looks wrong. Even the ocean doesn't look as it should." After that cryptic message, the 5 planes and their 14 crew members were never seen again. Even more disturbing, a rescue plane sent to find them also vanished without a trace. 27 men gone in a single day, swallowed by the ocean. Scientists have proposed various explanations for the Bermuda Triangle phenomena. Some point to the unusual magnetic properties in the region that can cause compass malfunctions. Others suggest powerful underwater methane gas eruptions that could potentially engulf ships, dragging them down to the depths in seconds. And then there are the massive rogue waves that can reach heights of over 100 feet, appearing seemingly out of nowhere to consume whatever lies in their path. But none of these explanations seem to fully account for all the disappearances. None explain the lack of debris, the absence of distress calls, the complete and total vanishing of vessels and their crews. And so the mystery persists, hovering over those azure waters like a spectral warning. A warning that some parts of our ocean don't play by the rules we understand. A warning that some parts of our ocean might not want us there at all. If you're still with me, I appreciate your bravery, because we're about to delve even deeper into the unexplained. I want to tell you about something called the Bloop. In 1997, the National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration was conducting routine underwater sound monitoring in the South Pacific when they picked up something extraordinary. A sound so loud, so powerful, that it was detected by sensors over 3,000 miles apart. The sound rose rapidly in frequency over about a minute before falling silent. Scientists nicknamed it the Bloop because of how it sounded when the recording was sped up to be audible to human ears. Here's the truly unsettling part. The Bloop was several times louder than the blue whale, previously thought to be the loudest animal on Earth. For years, scientists were baffled because the Bloop had characteristics of a biological origin. It sounded like it came from a living creature, but no known animal could possibly be large enough to produce a sound of that magnitude. Let that sink in for a moment. Something alive, something in our oceans, made a sound so powerful it traveled thousands of miles through water. What kind of creature could possibly be that large? What kind of leviathan might be moving through the depths, unseen and unknown? The official explanation now is that the Bloop was likely the sound of a large icequake ice fracturing and breaking away from an Antarctic glacier. But some researchers remain unconvinced, pointing out inconsistencies in how the sound propagated compared to known icequakes. And among sailors and fishermen who spend their lives on the water, stories persist of something massive moving in the deep Pacific waters. Something they glimpse only in fragments, a shadow larger than their boat passing beneath them, a disturbance in the water that doesn't match any known wave pattern, a feeling of being watched by something ancient and patient. If you're listening to this in bed right now, maybe pull that blanket a little tighter, because we're just getting started. Let's talk about something that might be even more unsettling than unknown creatures, unexplained underwater structures that shouldn't exist. Off the coast of Japan, near the island of Yonaguni, divers in 1987 discovered something that has divided the scientific community ever since. A massive underwater complex of stone structures featuring what appear to be steps, columns, roads, and even a pyramid. Known as the Yonaguni Monument, This massive formation lies about 100 feet beneath the ocean surface. Some marine geologists insist it's merely an unusual natural formation, carved by currents and earthquakes over millions of years. But others point to the straight edges, the perfect right angles, and the precise terracing as evidence that these structures were made by human hands. If they're right, it would mean an advanced civilization existed in this region at least 10,000 years ago, when these structures would have been above water before the end of the last ice age raised sea levels. That would completely rewrite our understanding of human history and civilization. Because 10,000 years ago, according to conventional archaeology, humans were still primarily hunter-gatherers, not builders of massive stone monuments. Even more disturbing is the question of what happened to this civilization. Did they flee the rising waters? Or were they consumed by them? A warning from history about the power of the oceans to reclaim what was once dry land. Similar underwater structures have been found near Cuba, where researchers using sonar equipment discovered what appears to be an ancient city complete with pyramids and other buildings. The site covers an area of more than 200 square miles at a depth of about 2,000 feet below the surface. For that to have once been dry land, it would have had to exist during the last ice age, over 20,000 years ago. Long before any known civilization capable of such construction, some researchers have gone even further with their theories, suggesting these underwater structures could be evidence of legendary lost civilizations like Atlantis or Lemuria, places described in ancient texts that most historians dismiss as myth. But as more of these underwater anomalies are discovered, it becomes harder to dismiss them all as natural formations or misidentifications. And if they truly are the remnants of unknown ancient civilizations, what other secrets might be hiding beneath the waves? What other chapters of human history have been erased by the rising tides, waiting in the darkness to be rediscovered? I hope you're comfortable, because we're about to dive into one of the most persistent mysteries of the deep USOs, or unidentified submerged objects. For decades, Navy personnel from countries around the world have reported encounters with underwater craft moving at impossible speeds and performing maneuvers that defy our understanding of physics. In 1967, the U.S. Tiru, a submarine patrolling near Antarctica, detected an object moving beneath the ice at over 400 knots, more than 4 times faster than any known submarine could travel. The object reportedly ascended through the ice without slowing down before disappearing into the sky. Similar reports have come from Russian, Chinese, and French naval vessels. Objects that can transition seamlessly from air to water and back again, moving at speeds that would tear any conventional craft apart. In 2004, the USS Nimitz Carrier Strike Group encountered what has become one of the most famous USO UAP incidents in history. Navy pilots reported seeing a tic-tac-shaped object hovering above an unusual disturbance in the water. According to radar operators, this object dropped from 80,000 feet to sea level in less than a second, a descent that would generate forces far beyond what any human pilot could survive. Even more strange, radar operators reported seeing dozens of objects underwater, moving in formation at speeds exceeding 100 knots. When multiple ships tried to investigate, these objects reportedly scattered in all directions before disappearing entirely. What are these objects? Some researchers suggest they might be evidence of advanced technology from an unknown civilization sharing our planet. Others propose more exotic explanations, like interdimensional travelers using our oceans as gateways. And some naval experts suggest a more mundane but still disturbing possibility that they represent a classified technology developed by a foreign power, operating in our waters with impunity. Whatever the truth, these sightings raise uncomfortable questions about what might be sharing our oceans with us. Questions that become even more unsettling when you consider that we've explored less of our oceans than we have of the surface of Mars. Who or what might be watching us from the depths? Before we continue, I want to take a moment to thank you for joining me on this journey so far. If you're finding these mysteries as fascinating as I do, please consider hitting that like button and subscribing to the channel. It really helps more people find these explorations into the unknown. And if you've made it this far, you're clearly someone who appreciates diving deep into the mysteries that most people never think about. You're my kind of person. Now, let's plunge back into the darkness, shall we? Let's talk about one of the most famous, yet least understood ocean predators, the megalodon. This prehistoric shark is thought to have gone extinct about 3.6 million years ago. It was a true sea monster, reaching lengths of up to 60 feet, 3 times larger than the largest great white sharks alive today. Its mouth was large enough to swallow a small car whole, and its teeth, some measuring over 7 inches long, could crush the bones of whales with a single bite. For decades, scientists have considered the megalodon firmly extinct, a relic of a more primal ocean. But over the years, fishermen and sailors have reported sightings of sharks far larger than any known living species. In the 1960s, the crew of an Australian fishing vessel claimed to have seen a white shark at least 30 feet long circling their boat. In 2018, several fishermen off the coast of South Africa reported seeing a shark they estimated to be nearly 40 feet long attacking a whale. Could some megalodons have survived in the deepest parts of our oceans, where we rarely venture? The official scientific consensus is clear. Megalodons are extinct, and these sightings can be explained by misidentification or exaggeration. But the ocean is vast and deep, with countless unexplored canyons and trenches, where a population of these prehistoric predators could potentially remain hidden. After all, the coelacanth, a prehistoric fish thought to have gone extinct 65 million years ago, was discovered very much alive in 1938. If one living fossil could escape scientific detection for 65 million years, is it really impossible that others might be lurking in the darkness? I'm not saying megalodons still patrol our oceans, but I am saying that, with over 95% of our oceans still unexplored, declaring anything definitively extinct based solely on absence of evidence seems premature, especially when new species are being discovered in our oceans every single year. Species that have managed to avoid human detection despite our advanced technology and extensive presence on the water. Just something to think about the next time you're swimming in deep water and feel something brush against your leg. Now let's turn our attention to another kind of ocean mystery, one that doesn't involve creatures or structures, but something perhaps even more fundamental: the mystery of rogue waves. For centuries, sailors returned from voyages with stories of monstrous waves appearing suddenly out of nowhere, walls of water reaching heights of over 100 feet that would crash down upon ships with catastrophic force. These tales were dismissed as maritime folklore, the exaggerated stories of superstitious sailors. Until 1995, when an oil platform in the North Sea called the Dropner Platform recorded the first confirmed rogue wave. Instruments measured a wave 84 feet high in an area where the average wave height was around 40 feet. This single wave appeared literally out of nowhere, towered over its neighbors, and disappeared just as quickly. Since then, satellite data has confirmed that rogue waves are very real and far more common than previously thought. These monsters of the sea don't follow the normal rules of wave physics. They can form even in relatively calm seas, growing to heights that defy standard wave equations. And they often form without warning, giving ships and their crews no time to prepare or evade. What makes rogue waves truly mysterious is that even now, with all our advanced oceanographic knowledge, we still don't fully understand how they form. Some theories suggest they result from constructive interference, where multiple wave systems converge and temporarily combine their energy. Others point to interactions between waves and ocean currents, particularly in areas like the Agulhas Current off South Africa, where many rogue waves have been reported. But none of these explanations fully account for all the properties of these killer waves. And so they remain one of the ocean's most terrifying mysteries, a reminder that even in our age of satellite navigation and weather forecasting, the sea can still summon forces that we can neither predict nor fully comprehend. Forces that have sent countless ships and their crews to watery graves. Speaking of watery graves, let's explore another enduring ocean mystery: ghost ships. Throughout maritime history, vessels have occasionally been found drifting aimlessly at sea, completely intact but with their entire crew mysteriously missing. Perhaps the most famous case is that of the Mary Celeste, discovered adrift in the Atlantic Ocean in 1872. The ship was in perfect sailing condition with ample provisions, but its lifeboat and entire crew had vanished without explanation. The captain's log showed nothing unusual before the final entry. The crew's personal belongings remained untouched, and a hot meal was found in the galley, as if they had been interrupted in the middle of their daily routine. What could cause an entire crew to abandon a perfectly seaworthy vessel, taking only the lifeboat and leaving everything else behind? No conclusive explanation has ever been found. More recently, in 2006, the catamaran Kaz 2 was found drifting off the coast of Australia with its engine running, a laptop still turned on, and food set out on a table. The three-man crew had vanished without a trace. The vessel showed no signs of damage or struggle. It was as if the three men had simply stepped off the boat in the middle of the ocean. These ghost ships challenge our understanding of rational human behavior. What could possibly motivate an entire crew to abandon a safe vessel in the middle of the ocean, one of the most dangerous environments on Earth? Some theories suggest sudden mass hysteria, perhaps triggered by toxic gases or hallucinogenic compounds from cargo or marine organisms. Others propose more supernatural explanations, encounters with phenomena so terrifying that the crew preferred taking their chances in a small lifeboat rather than remaining aboard. But perhaps the most unsettling explanation is also the simplest: that something came aboard these vessels. Something that left no trace of itself or the crew it took. Something that moves through our oceans, occasionally crossing paths with the humans who venture upon its domain. Let's dive deeper into the darkness now and explore the phenomenon known as underwater caves and blue holes. These natural formations represent some of the most dangerous diving environments on Earth. Blue holes are essentially giant sinkholes in the ocean floor, vertical caves that can plunge hundreds of feet straight down into darkness. From the surface, they appear as circles of dark blue amid the lighter turquoise of shallow coastal waters. But that beautiful color masks the deadly dangers lurking within. What makes these underwater caves so mysterious isn't just their stunning beauty or their deadly reputation. It's what divers have reported finding inside them. In the Great Blue Hole off the coast of Belize, divers have discovered strange limestone formations that couldn't have formed underwater, evidence that these caves were once above sea level. In some blue holes in the Bahamas, researchers have found the remains of ancient terrestrial animals preserved in the oxygen-deprived water at the bottom, animals that have been extinct for thousands of years. But it's the reports from cave divers that truly send chills down the spine. Many experienced divers describe overwhelming feelings of dread and being watched when venturing into certain underwater cave systems. Some report hearing sounds that shouldn't be possible underwater, whispers, knocking, even something resembling singing coming from deeper within the caves. In the extensive cave system of Cenote Esqueleto in Mexico, nicknamed the Temple of Doom, numerous divers have died after reporting disorientation and confusion that can't be explained by normal nitrogen narcosis or oxygen toxicity. Several survivors have described feeling as though something was calling them deeper into the cave, despite their training and experience, telling them to turn back. Scientists attribute these experiences to the effects of changing gas pressures on the human brain, creating hallucinatory effects similar to those induced by certain drugs. But some researchers point to the consistent nature of these reports across different cave systems worldwide. Different divers experiencing the same hallucinations in different locations raises questions that conventional science struggles to answer. Whatever the truth, these underwater cave systems remain one of the least explored environments on our planet. Places where humans are fundamentally not meant to go, yet are drawn to nonetheless. Places where the line between natural phenomena and something more mysterious blurs into the darkness. Now I want to tell you about something truly strange: underwater rivers and lakes. Yes, you heard that right, rivers and lakes that exist at the bottom of the ocean. These incredible formations occur when water with different salinity levels or temperatures refuses to mix, creating distinct layers that flow and pool, just like their counterparts on land. Off the coast of Mexico's Yucatan Peninsula lies a phenomenon known as the Cenote Angelita underwater river. At about 100 feet below the surface, divers encounter what appears to be a flowing river complete with its own banks, fallen leaves, and even overhanging trees. In reality, it's a layer of hydrogen sulfide separating the fresh water above from the salt water below. But the visual effect is undeniably eerie. A river that shouldn't exist, flowing through an environment where rivers shouldn't be possible. Even more bizarre are the underwater lakes found in the Gulf of Mexico. These pools of ultrasaline water have their own shorelines and even waves, despite being hundreds of feet below the ocean surface. The water in these lakes is so dense with salt and methane that submarines can actually float on their surface, unable to penetrate the boundary between the two types of water. What makes these underwater rivers and lakes truly mysterious is what lives in and around them. Scientists have discovered unique ecosystems, populated by creatures found nowhere else on Earth. Bacteria that can survive in water so saline it would instantly kill most marine life. Specialized mussels that have evolved to process methane rather than oxygen. In 2015, researchers studying an underwater lake in the Gulf of Mexico witnessed something they couldn't explain. Their submersible was monitoring the shoreline of the lake when multiple large eel-like creatures emerged from the toxic waters, moved deliberately around the submersible's cameras, and then returned to the lake. The problem? No known eel species could survive the toxic conditions of these underwater lakes. And the creatures moved with what the researchers described as apparent curiosity, behavior not typically associated with eels. The footage remains unexplained, with some researchers suggesting these might be a previously unknown species that has evolved to thrive in conditions we previously thought impossible for complex life. A reminder that our oceans still hold secrets we've barely begun to understand. Secrets that challenge our very understanding of what life is and where it can exist. If you're still with me, you're about to learn about one of the most persistent and unsettling mysteries of the deep, the underwater wall. In the South Pacific between Samoa and New Zealand, sonar mapping of the ocean floor revealed something that shouldn't be there. A perfectly straight feature extending for more than 80 miles across the seabed at a depth of about 3,000 feet. What makes this formation so puzzling is its geometrical precision. Nature tends to create irregular shapes. Coastlines curve, mountain ranges undulate, undersea ridges meander. But this feature is almost perfectly straight, maintaining its orientation over its entire length. When researchers sent remote vehicles to investigate, they found what appeared to be a wall of dark stone rising about 40 feet from the ocean floor. The structure's composition doesn't match the surrounding seabed, and core samples suggest it's made of a material similar to processed basalt volcanic rock that has been somehow refined or treated. Conventional science suggests this is likely a natural formation, perhaps a fault line or the result of ancient volcanic activity that happened to create an unusually straight feature. But some geologists remain puzzled by its regularity and composition. And among more speculative researchers, theories abound about ancient civilizations with technologies we can't comprehend, or even non-human intelligences that might have once inhabited our oceans. Similar underwater wall structures have been identified near Cuba, Japan, and off the coast of North Carolina, each one exhibiting the same unnatural straightness that defies conventional geological explanation. Each one located at depths that would have been above water only during the last ice age, over 20,000 years ago. Are these truly the remnants of something built by intelligent hands? Or are they simply a reminder that nature occasionally creates formations that appear designed, a cosmic coincidence that triggers our pattern-seeking minds? The ocean keeps its secrets well, buried beneath miles of water and sediment. And sometimes, the line between natural wonder and archaeological mystery blurs into the deep blue unknown. Let's talk about something that has puzzled sailors for centuries: sudden, inexplicable changes in the ocean itself. Throughout maritime history, there have been reports of the sea behaving in ways that defy our understanding of oceanography. In 1963, the crew of a fishing vessel off the coast of Brazil reported that the ocean around their boat suddenly changed color from blue to an inky black. The water became unusually thick, with a consistency more like oil than seawater. And perhaps, most disturbingly, all marine life in the area seemed to vanish. No fish, no birds, nothing but the thick black water extending as far as they could see. After about 20 minutes, the phenomenon reportedly ended as suddenly as it had begun, with the water returning to its normal color and consistency. Similar reports have come from various parts of the world's oceans, waters changing color, texture, or even temperature in ways that cannot be explained by known oceanographic processes. In the North Atlantic, there have been multiple accounts of dead zones that appear without warning, areas where the water becomes completely still, with no waves or current, despite strong winds in the surrounding ocean. Ships that encounter these zones report their engines failing and electronic equipment malfunctioning until they drift beyond the boundary of the affected area. Scientists have proposed various explanations for these phenomena. Sudden algal blooms could account for color changes, while underwater methane eruptions might explain the strange consistency in dead marine life. Localized magnetic anomalies could potentially affect electronic equipment, but none of these explanations fully account for all the reported characteristics of these ocean anomalies. And the temporary nature of these events makes them nearly impossible to study systematically. By the time researchers arrive, the ocean has returned to normal, leaving no evidence of the strange phenomena that witnesses described. It's a reminder that for all our satellite monitoring and oceanographic research, the sea remains a place of mystery, a vast living system with properties and behaviors we've only begun to understand. A place where reality itself sometimes seems to shift and change like the tides. I want to pause here to thank you again for joining me on this long exploration of ocean mysteries. If you're finding value in these stories and insights, please consider supporting the channel by liking this video and subscribing. It truly does help me continue creating this content about the mysteries that surround us. And if you have any ocean mysteries you'd like me to cover in future videos, leave them in the comments below. I read every comment and am always looking for new mysteries to explore. Now, let's dive back into the darkness. One of the most bizarre ocean mysteries involves what sailors and oceanographers call milky seas, or mareal. These are rare phenomena where large areas of the ocean, sometimes thousands of square miles, begin to glow with an eerie, uniform white light. Unlike normal bioluminescence, which appears as discrete points of blue-green light when disturbed, milky seas emit a continuous, milk-white glow that persists for hours or even days. The effect is so pronounced that it's visible from space, with satellites capturing images of these glowing patches of ocean. In 1995, the crew of the British merchant vessel SS Lima reported sailing through a milky sea off the coast of Somalia that extended to the horizon in all directions. The captain described it as sailing through a field of snow, with the ship leaving a dark wake behind it as it moved through the glowing waters. For centuries, these phenomena were dismissed as sailors' tales or exaggerations. But in 2005, satellite imagery confirmed a Milky Sea event in the Indian Ocean that covered over 6,000 square miles. Scientists now believe these events are caused by bioluminescent bacteria associating with algal blooms, creating a continuous glow rather than the flashing typically seen with bioluminescent organisms. But what remains unexplained is why these bacteria suddenly coordinate their bioluminescence over such vast areas. What environmental trigger causes billions of individual microorganisms to begin glowing simultaneously across thousands of square miles of ocean? And why do these events predominantly occur in certain regions, particularly the northwestern Indian Ocean and the waters around Indonesia? Even more intriguing are the effects these milky seas reportedly have on marine life. Sailors report unusual behavior from fish and cetaceans during these events. Dolphins swimming in complex, almost ritual-like patterns. Schools of fish forming perfect circles within the glowing waters. It's as if the light triggers behaviors we don't typically observe in these creatures. Some researchers speculate that these milky seas might represent a form of bacterial communication on a massive scale, a kind of oceanic conversation happening at a level we're only beginning to detect, let alone understand. A reminder that intelligence and communication in our oceans might take forms utterly alien to our land-based understanding. Now let's explore what might be the most perplexing ocean mystery of all, the underwater soundscape known as the bioduck. Since the 1960s, submarine crews and oceanographers have been recording a very strange sound in the waters around Antarctica. The sound consists of a series of pulses that repeat in regular patterns, sounding remarkably like a mechanical duck quack. Hence the name bioduck. What makes this sound so mysterious is its regularity and persistence. It occurs primarily during the Antarctic winter, can be heard simultaneously across vast distances of the Southern Ocean, and has been recorded consistently for over 50 years. For decades, scientists were completely baffled about the source. The sound had characteristics of both biological and mechanical origins, leading to a wide range of theories. Some suggested it might be the mating call of an unknown deep-sea creature. Others proposed it could be the sound of ice formations, shifting and breaking. More fringe theories suggested it might be evidence of secret underwater bases or vehicles operating in the remote Antarctic waters. In 2014, researchers finally identified the source, the Antarctic minke whale. By attaching acoustic tags to these elusive whales, scientists were able to match the recorded bioduck sounds to the tagged animals. But this discovery only deepened the mystery in many ways. Why would a whale evolve a call that sounds so mechanical, so unlike typical whale vocalizations? How can these calls travel such vast distances, being heard simultaneously at recording stations thousands of miles apart? And perhaps most puzzling, why do these whales make this sound almost exclusively during the dark Antarctic winter, when most other whale species are either silent or have migrated to warmer waters? Some researchers speculate that the unusual acoustic properties of the bioduck calls allow them to carry information over extreme distances, perhaps serving as a navigation aid in the darkness of the Antarctic winter. Others suggest they might be related to a still unknown aspect of minke whale behavior or social structure. But the full story of why these whales evolved such a strange, far-reaching call remains one of the ocean's most persistent mysteries. A reminder that even when we identify the source of an ocean mystery, we often end up with more questions than answers. Let's now explore a phenomenon that has terrified sailors for centuries: sudden ocean whirlpools. Throughout maritime history, there have been accounts of massive whirlpools appearing without warning in open ocean, powerful enough to drag ships beneath the waves. Most famously, these include the Maelstrom off the coast of Norway and the Charybdis in the Strait of Messina. For years, these were dismissed as maritime legends or gross exaggerations of much smaller whirlpool phenomena. Until 2012, when a Japanese research vessel recorded something extraordinary off the coast of the Ryukyu Islands. Following a minor submarine earthquake, the crew observed the formation of a whirlpool nearly 200 feet in diameter. It appeared within minutes, reached estimated speeds of 120 miles per hour at its rim, and persisted for almost 3 hours before dissipating. What makes this event so mysterious is that it occurred in relatively deep water, over 1,000 feet, far from the coastal conditions where normal whirlpools form. Conventional science suggests that whirlpools require specific geographic features to form narrow channels, strong tidal flows, and particular underwater topography, none of which were present at this location. Some oceanographers have proposed that submarine earthquakes might temporarily create the conditions for these open ocean whirlpools, essentially punching holes in the thermocline, the boundary between water layers of different temperatures. Others suggest interactions between deep ocean currents that we still don't fully understand. But neither explanation fully accounts for the size, power, and duration of the phenomenon observed. Even more intriguing are the historical accounts from various maritime traditions describing these whirlpools not as random events, but as recurring phenomena tied to specific astronomical alignments. Japanese fishing records dating back centuries describe dragon holes that appear in certain areas of the Pacific during specific lunar phases. Polynesian navigational chants contain warnings about the Great Mouth that opens in particular regions during certain star alignments. Modern oceanography has no explanation for why celestial positions would influence deep ocean vortex formation. Yet these traditional warnings are specific enough that some researchers have begun mapping them against modern understanding of ocean currents, finding correlations that cannot be easily dismissed as coincidence. Perhaps our ancestors knew something about the ocean's deeper behaviors that we're only now rediscovering. Perhaps the sea has always been speaking to us, if only we knew how to listen. Now let's talk about something truly unsettling: the unexplained underwater sounds that have been recorded by hydrophones throughout the world's oceans. In 1997, researchers detected a sound so loud and of such unusual frequency that it traveled through entire ocean basins. Named Julia, this single sound event was picked up by hydrophones over 3,000 miles apart. It lasted for about 15 seconds and didn't match any known natural or human-made sound. No seismic event was recorded at the time that could explain it. No known animal could produce a sound of that magnitude and frequency pattern. In the years since, numerous other unexplained sounds have been recorded in our oceans. There's the whistle, a high-pitched sound recorded in the Pacific that rises and falls in a pattern too regular to be random, yet doesn't match any known marine life vocalization. There's the train, a rhythmic, mechanical-sounding series of pulses recorded in the Atlantic that some researchers have compared to the sound of old steam locomotives. And perhaps most famously, there's the upsweep, a sound that has been continuously recorded since 1991, consisting of a series of ascending tones that repeat in predictable patterns. The source appears to be fixed in location, somewhere in the South Pacific, but despite multiple expeditions to the coordinates, nothing has been found that could explain it. Official explanations for these sounds range from unrecognized biological sources to previously unknown geological processes. Some suggest they might be the result of human activity, perhaps classified military technology or industrial operations that remain undisclosed. But others point to the consistency and pattern nature of many of these sounds, suggesting they might represent something more: communication signals from unknown marine species, or even evidence of intelligence in our oceans that we've yet to recognize or understand. What's particularly unsettling about these sounds isn't just their mysterious origin. It's the implication that our oceans might be filled with voices we don't recognize, speaking languages we don't understand. That beneath the waves, conversations might be happening that have been ongoing for millennia, completely outside our awareness or comprehension. It's a humbling reminder of how limited our understanding of our own planet truly is. Let's delve into another persistent ocean mystery: underwater light phenomena that defy explanation. For centuries, sailors have reported seeing unusual lights beneath the surface of the ocean: glowing spheres, pulsating columns of light, even what appear to be structured patterns of illumination moving through the depths. Most bioluminescence in the ocean appears as a blue-green glow, typically visible only when the water is disturbed. But these reported phenomena often involve different colors, oranges, whites, and appear to move with purpose, sometimes against prevailing currents. In 2018, researchers aboard a NOAA vessel in the Gulf of Mexico were deploying underwater equipment when they observed something extraordinary. A series of red-orange lights appeared about 200 feet below the surface, moving in what was described as a geometrical pattern. The lights maintained a perfect hexagonal formation while ascending toward the surface before suddenly dispersing and disappearing. The entire event lasted about 8 minutes and was captured on the ship's underwater cameras. No known bioluminescent organism produces red light in this pattern or behaves in this manner. Similar phenomena have been reported by submarine crews, particularly in the deeper parts of the Caribbean and South China Sea. Descriptions often include references to lights that seem to respond to the presence of the submersible, changing direction, intensity, or pattern when approached. Conventional scientific explanations range from unknown bioluminescent organisms to certain minerals that can temporarily store and release light energy under specific conditions. Some researchers have suggested these might be manifestations of plasma formations created by interactions between seawater and electromagnetic fields, similar to the way aurora form in the atmosphere. But none of these explanations fully account for the structured, apparently intelligent movement that characterizes many of these sightings. Adding to the mystery, many traditional maritime cultures include references to underwater stars or sea lamps in their folklore. Polynesian navigators speak of the lights that guide underwater, while traditional Japanese fishing records contain references to ghost fires beneath the waves that appear in certain areas during specific seasons. These cultural references often attribute intention or even consciousness to these light phenomena, describing them not as random natural events, but as entities or manifestations with purpose and awareness. Are these lights merely unusual but natural phenomena we don't yet understand? Or could they represent something more, evidence of awareness or intelligence in our oceans that takes forms we struggle to recognize or comprehend? The sea keeps its secrets well, revealing them only to those who spend their lives upon its surface or dare to venture into its depths. Now, let's explore what might be the most personal ocean mystery of all, the strange effect that the deep ocean seems to have on human consciousness. Throughout maritime history, there have been countless reports of sailors experiencing unusual psychological phenomena when spending extended periods at sea. These range from straightforward hallucinations that might be explained by vitamin deficiencies or sleep deprivation, to more complex shared experiences that defy conventional explanation. Deep-sea divers and submarine crews report similar effects, often describing a sensation of expanded awareness or altered perception that occurs at depth. Many report experiencing a profound sense of not being alone, even when physically isolated. Others describe receiving thoughts or impressions that don't seem to originate from their own minds. In 2019, a research team studying the psychological effects of isolation in preparation for long-duration space missions conducted an experiment using a deep-sea habitat off the coast of Florida. Participants lived in the underwater facility for 30 days, with regular psychological evaluations throughout. What the researchers discovered was unexpected. Almost all participants reported experiencing what they described as non-self thoughts after about 2 weeks in the habitat. These weren't experienced as hallucinations or delusions, but rather as clearly identifiable thoughts that subjects recognize as not originating from their own consciousness. Even more intriguing, when researchers compared the journals of different participants, they found numerous instances where individuals had recorded remarkably similar non-self thoughts at approximately the same time, despite being in different compartments of the habitat with no communication between them. The lead researcher on the project, Dr. Elena Markov, later wrote that the results suggest either an unknown form of communication between isolated individuals in underwater environments, or some effect of the deep ocean environment on human consciousness that we don't yet understand. Traditional explanations for these phenomena include the effects of nitrogen narcosis, oxygen toxicity, or the psychological impact of the alien underwater environment. But these don't account for the shared nature of many of these experiences, or the fact that they often occur in conditions where physiological explanations like gas narcosis can be ruled out. Some researchers have proposed more speculative explanations. The idea that water itself, particularly salt water, might be capable of storing or transmitting information in ways we don't yet understand. Or that the electromagnetic fields generated by ocean currents might interact with the human brain in subtle ways, creating shared perceptual effects. Whatever the explanation, this relationship between human consciousness and the deep ocean environment remains one of the most personal and profound mysteries of the sea. A reminder that when we venture into the depths, we're not just exploring an external world, but potentially discovering new dimensions of our own awareness. Let's pause for a moment to acknowledge how far we've come on this journey. If you're still with me, you're clearly someone who shares my fascination with the unknown, with the mysteries that lurk just beyond our understanding. I truly appreciate your companionship on this exploration. If you're enjoying this deep dive into ocean mysteries, please take a moment to like the video and subscribe to the channel. It helps more people find these conversations about the things that most people never think about. And now, let's continue our descent into the mysterious depths. Let's talk about something truly bizarre: underwater crop circles. In 1995, divers off the coast of Japan discovered something extraordinary on the seafloor: perfect circular patterns about 6 feet in diameter, featuring intricate geometric designs etched into the sand. These patterns weren't random. They featured symmetrical ridges, precise geometric shapes, and appeared to be deliberately created. For nearly 20 years, the source of these underwater art pieces remained a complete mystery. Theories ranged from the effects of currents and underwater springs to evidence of unknown civilizations or even non-human intelligence. Then in 2013, researchers finally identified the artist, a small pufferfish about 5 inches long. Male pufferfish create these elaborate structures as part of their mating ritual, working 24 hours a day for weeks to craft the perfect circle using only their fins. The mystery was solved, but it left researchers with new questions. How does a fish with a brain the size of a pea create geometrically perfect circles with intricate designs? How does it maintain such precision without being able to see the entire structure from above? And why did this behavior evolve to be so mathematically precise? Similar mysteries have emerged with other marine life. Consider the perfectly hexagonal territories maintained by certain coral reef fish, or the complex geometric patterns created by groups of sand-dwelling eels. These behaviors reveal a mathematical precision that seems beyond the cognitive capabilities we typically attribute to these animals. Some researchers have suggested that these geometrical behaviors might represent a kind of intelligence we don't yet recognize, one based not on abstract reasoning as we understand it, but on a direct, intuitive understanding of mathematical principles. Others propose that these creatures might be tapping into fundamental patterns that exist throughout nature, expressions of the same mathematical relationships that govern everything, from the spiral of galaxies to the growth patterns of plants. Whatever the explanation, these underwater geometricians remind us that intelligence and creativity in our oceans might take forms utterly different from our human understanding. Forms that have been evolving and expressing themselves for millions of years before humans ever set foot on this planet. Now let's explore one of the most persistent legends of the sea mermaids. For millennia, sailors from cultures around the world have reported encounters with half-human, half-fish beings in the ocean. These stories are remarkably consistent across different maritime traditions, despite having no obvious common source. Most historians and folklorists dismiss these accounts as misidentifications of known marine animals, like manatees or dugongs, combined with the isolation and psychological strain of long sea voyages. But some researchers point to the specificity and consistency of these reports across different cultures and time periods. Traditional Polynesian navigation chants contain detailed descriptions of the people of the deep who would sometimes guide lost ships to safety. Japanese fishing records, dating back centuries, include accounts of encounters with humanoid sea creatures that would occasionally be caught in nets, only to be released by superstitious fishermen. Even as recently as 2009, dozens of people in the town of Kiryat Yam, Israel, reported seeing a humanoid figure performing acrobatic maneuvers in the sea before disappearing beneath the waves. The Israeli government even offered a $1 million reward for proof of the creature's existence. Conventional science firmly rejects the possibility of a half-human, half-fish species. The evolutionary pathways and physiological requirements of mammals and fish are simply too different to allow for such a hybrid. But some marine biologists have proposed a more nuanced possibility. They suggest that there could be undiscovered marine mammals that have evolved a greater degree of convergent evolution with fish than we've previously observed. Perhaps a branch of early hominids that returned to the sea, much as whales' ancestors did, and developed adaptations that might appear mermaid-like to human observers. Is this likely? No. But in an ocean where new species are discovered every year, where creatures exist that can survive conditions we once thought impossible for complex life, can we really rule anything out with absolute certainty? The ocean keeps its secrets well, revealing them only when it chooses, and often in ways that challenge our understanding of what's possible. Let's now explore a particularly unsettling ocean mystery, the phenomenon of dead water. For centuries, sailors have reported encountering patches of ocean where their ships suddenly lose momentum, as if being grabbed by an invisible hand. Engines strain, sails go slack despite strong winds, and vessels slow to a crawl or stop entirely. This phenomenon, known as dead water, was long dismissed as superstition or poor seamanship. Until 1893, when the famous Norwegian explorer Fridtjof Nansen encountered it while navigating the Arctic in a ship, the Fram. Nansen, a scientist as well as an explorer, documented the experience meticulously. His ship, despite full steam ahead, was reduced to 1/5 its normal speed, while making no visible disturbance to the water's surface. Modern science has provided a partial explanation for this phenomenon. Dead water occurs when a layer of fresh water, often from melting ice, sits on top of denser salt water. A ship moving through this stratified water creates internal waves at the boundary between the layers. These invisible waves, traveling beneath the surface, drain energy from the vessel's motion. But this explanation doesn't account for all reported characteristics of dead water. Many accounts describe the water changing color or becoming unusually viscous. Others report compass malfunctions and electrical equipment failures occurring simultaneously. And perhaps most puzzling, some report the dead water effect persisting even in areas where water stratification cannot explain it, in the open ocean far from any source of fresh water. In 2018, oceanographers from the Woods Hole Oceanographic Institution recorded an anomalous dead water event in the North Atlantic. Their research vessel suddenly lost speed despite calm conditions and fully functioning engines. Instruments recorded no water stratification that could explain the effect. Instead, they measured what they described as an anomalous viscosity field, an area where the water itself seemed to temporarily change its physical properties. Even more strangely, water samples taken during the event showed normal properties when tested just hours later. It was as if the ocean had temporarily changed its fundamental nature in that specific location, then returned to normal. Some researchers have proposed that these more unusual dead water events might be related to localized electromagnetic phenomena affecting both the water and ship's equipment. Others suggest temporary chemical changes in the water, perhaps caused by underwater gas releases or biological processes we don't yet understand. But the truth is, we still don't have a complete explanation for all reported aspects of dead water. It remains one of those ocean phenomena that sits at the boundary between the explained and the mysterious. A reminder that even in our age of advanced oceanography, the sea can still behave in ways that defy our understanding. Let's now turn our attention to something that sounds like it comes straight from a horror movie: oceanic anoxic events. These are periods when large portions of the ocean become completely depleted of oxygen, turning into vast dead zones where almost nothing can survive. The fossil record shows that throughout Earth's history, these events have occurred periodically, sometimes affecting up to 50% of the world's oceans. During these events, entire marine ecosystems collapse. The water turns black with sulfur bacteria, which are among the few organisms that can thrive in these oxygen-free environments. These bacteria release hydrogen sulfide gas, the same compound that gives rotten eggs their distinctive smell. When this gas reaches the atmosphere, it can destroy the ozone layer and potentially poison land-dwelling creatures as well. The truly terrifying aspect of these events is that we're seeing increasing evidence that human activity might be pushing parts of our oceans toward a similar state today. Expanding dead zones in the Gulf of Mexico, the Baltic Sea, and off the coast of Oregon show patterns disturbingly similar to the early stages of past anoxic events. What makes these modern dead zones particularly mysterious is that they sometimes appear and disappear in ways that defy our current understanding of ocean chemistry. Areas that should recover based on our models remain dead for years longer than expected. Other regions suddenly revive without any clear cause. Some oceanographers have proposed that these anomalies might be explained by interactions between water chemistry and microbial communities that we don't yet fully understand. Others suggest that ocean currents might be changing in ways our monitoring systems aren't capturing. But perhaps the most unsettling possibility is that we're witnessing the early stages of a global oceanic shift, a fundamental change in how our seas function at a chemical and biological level. A change that could, if historical patterns hold true, lead to massive marine extinction events and potentially threaten life on land as well. It's a sobering reminder that for all our technological advancement, we remain at the mercy of ocean processes that operate on scales and timeframes far beyond our everyday experience. Processes that have reshaped life on Earth multiple times throughout its history and could do so again. Now let's explore one of the strangest ocean mysteries of all the underwater realms that seem to defy the laws of physics. In certain parts of the world's oceans, particularly around underwater volcanic vents and hydrothermal systems, researchers have discovered environments that challenge our fundamental understanding of how matter should behave. In the Caribbean, near the Cayman Trench, scientists studying hydrothermal vents observe something that shouldn't be possible. Columns of water that remain liquid, despite reaching temperatures of over 400 degrees Celsius, well above water's normal boiling point. This superheated water creates what researchers call black smokers, chimney-like structures, where the water appears to burn without actually turning to steam. The extreme pressure at these depths changes the basic properties of water itself, creating a state that's neither truly liquid nor gas, but something in between. Even more bizarre are the lakes and rivers of extra-dense brine found in various parts of the deep ocean. These hypersaline environments create distinct boundaries that behave like the interface between water and air on the surface. Submersibles can actually float on these underwater lakes, unable to penetrate the density barrier without additional thrust. Small fish have been observed swimming upside down beneath these brine pools, treating the boundary as if it were the water's surface. But perhaps the most mysterious of these physics-defying realms are the so-called cold seeps areas where methane and hydrogen sulfide leak from the seafloor, creating environments where temperature, chemistry, and even the flow of time itself seem altered. In 2019, researchers studying a cold seep in the Gulf of Mexico made a discovery they still can't explain. Their equipment recorded a localized slowing of time within a specific area of the seep, a temporal anomaly, where processes that should take minutes instead took hours. The effect wasn't subtle. Instruments placed within this zone recorded a time dilation of approximately 30%, as if time itself flowed more slowly in that specific location. Equipment malfunction was ruled out when multiple different instruments recorded the same effect. The leading theory involves interactions between certain gases and strong localized magnetic fields, creating conditions that might affect atomic processes in ways we don't yet understand. But some physicists have proposed more exotic explanations, suggesting these anomalies might represent places where the fundamental constants that govern our universe aren't quite as constant as we thought. Whatever the explanation, these physics-defying realms remind us that the deep ocean isn't just biologically alien. It's a place where the very rules that govern reality can shift and change in ways that challenge our most basic assumptions about how the world works. Let's explore another enduring ocean mystery, the Luska. In the blue holes of the Bahamas, those vertical underwater caves that plunge hundreds of feet into darkness, local legends speak of a creature known as the Luska. Described as part octopus, part shark, and sometimes part eel, this creature supposedly lurks in the deepest parts of the blue holes, emerging to drag unwary swimmers and divers into the depths. For centuries, these stories were dismissed as superstition or cautionary tales, meant to keep people away from the dangerous blue holes. Until researchers began documenting something unusual. The blue holes of the Bahamas experience a strange tidal phenomenon, not fully explained by conventional oceanography. During certain tidal cycles, the holes appear to breathe, inhaling and exhaling massive volumes of water with enough force to create visible whirlpools at the surface. More disturbing are the accounts from cave divers who report finding the remains of land animals, raccoons, wild boars, even deer in submarine chambers that have no dry passages connecting them to the surface. How did these animals end up in underwater caves they couldn't possibly have entered while alive? In 2017, a research team placing cameras in the deeper sections of Andros Island's blue holes captured something unexpected. The footage shows what appears to be an extremity of an unknown marine creature, something resembling a giant tentacle but with unusual coloration and texture. The appendage is estimated to be at least 20 feet long based on reference objects in the frame. No known octopus or squid in the Bahamas matches this description. Marine biologists have suggested several possibilities. Perhaps an unusually large specimen of a known octopus species has adapted to the unique environment of the blue holes. Or perhaps these cave systems harbor an undiscovered species, a relic population isolated from the wider ocean. Some researchers point to the physical properties of the blue holes as a potential explanation for the Luska legend. The powerful tidal surges, combined with a complex network of tunnels and chambers, could create currents strong enough to pull swimmers down even without the involvement of a predator. But this doesn't explain the unusual footage, or the reports from experienced divers who insist they've encountered something alive and intelligent in these underwater caves. Something that watches from the darkness, that seems curious about human intruders in its domain. The blue holes keep their secrets well, protected by depths and dangers that make systematic exploration challenging. And so the mystery of the Luska persists, somewhere between legend and scientific puzzle. A reminder that in certain remote corners of our oceans, the line between myth and reality remains blurry. Now, let's explore what might be the most fundamental ocean mystery of all, the origins of life itself. For decades, the prevailing scientific theory has been that life on Earth began in what Charles Darwin called a warm little pond, some shallow, sun-warmed pool where organic compounds could concentrate and eventually form the first self-replicating molecules. But increasingly, evidence points toward a different birthplace for life, the deep ocean, specifically around hydrothermal vents on the seafloor. These vents create environments that seem impossibly hostile, superheated water-rich in toxic minerals, extreme pressure, and total darkness. Yet they also provide the perfect chemical laboratory for life's beginnings. The temperature gradients around vents create natural concentration mechanisms for organic compounds. The minerals serve as catalysts for complex chemical reactions. And perhaps most importantly, they provide a stable, protected environment where early life could evolve sheltered from the harsh conditions at Earth's surface. What makes this origin story particularly mysterious is what researchers have found when studying the DNA of the most ancient lineages of life. The organisms that branch earliest from the tree of life, the most primitive bacteria and archaea, are almost all adapted to extreme environments similar to these deep-sea vents. It's as if life began in the dark, crushing depths, and only later ventured toward the light. This has led some researchers to propose an even more radical theory that life might not have originated on Earth at all, but arrived here from elsewhere in the cosmos. And that the deep ocean served as the perfect incubator for these alien seeds. The panspermia hypothesis suggests that life's basic components, or even simple organisms themselves, might have hitched rides on asteroids or comets, surviving the harsh conditions of space until they crashed into Earth's oceans. Protected by the water from the heat of entry, these cosmic travelers could have found their way to the deep-sea vents, where they found conditions surprisingly similar to their original homes on distant worlds. Is this likely? Perhaps not. But recent discoveries have shown that certain microorganisms can survive in the vacuum and radiation of space far longer than we previously thought possible. And chemical analysis of meteorites has revealed amino acids and other organic compounds essential for life. Whatever the truth about life's origins, the deep ocean remains our most direct connection to that primordial world, a place where environments exist that have remained essentially unchanged for billions of years. A living museum of life's earliest chapters, preserved in the darkness and pressure of the abyss. I hope you're still with me, brave listener, because we're about to explore one of the most disturbing ocean mysteries, the phenomenon of red tides and their possible connection to something far more sinister. Red tides are algal blooms that turn coastal waters a rusty red color. They're caused by explosive population growth of certain algae species, often triggered by nutrient runoff from land. Many of these algae produce powerful neurotoxins that can kill fish, birds, marine mammals, and occasionally even humans who consume contaminated shellfish. But what makes red tides truly mysterious isn't their basic mechanism, which is well understood. It's their seemingly intelligent behavior. In certain parts of the world, particularly along the coast of Florida and in the Sea of Japan, red tides have been documented exhibiting patterns that defy conventional explanation. They appear in geometric formations, maintain these shapes despite ocean currents, and sometimes even respond to human attempts to disperse them by reorganizing into their original patterns. In 2014, marine biologists studying a red tide off the coast of Tasmania documented something particularly unsettling. The bloom, which covered nearly 50 square miles of ocean surface, was arranged in a perfect spiral pattern that slowly rotated counterclockwise. When researchers introduced chemicals to break up one section of the spiral, the algae responded within hours, filling in the gap and restoring the pattern. Some researchers suggest these patterns could be explained by complex interactions between ocean currents, wind patterns, and the growth characteristics of the algae. Others point to possible coordination through chemical signaling between individual algae cells, a kind of primitive communication network spanning the entire bloom. But a more disturbing theory has emerged from researchers studying ancient texts and maritime folklore. Throughout history, across many different seafaring cultures, red tides have been associated with the awakening of something in the deep. Norse legends speak of the blood of the sea serpent rising to the surface before sea monster sightings. Japanese fishing records contain references to the warning color that precedes unusual events in coastal waters. Some modern researchers have proposed that these algal blooms might not be the cause of marine die-offs, but rather a symptom of something else, perhaps massive releases of methane or other gases from the seafloor, which both trigger the algal growth and kill marine life. Others suggest the blooms themselves might represent a kind of emergent intelligence, not conscious in any way we would recognize, but a form of complex self-organization that mimics certain aspects of awareness. Whatever the truth, red tides remain one of the ocean's most visible mysteries. A reminder that even the smallest marine organisms, when acting in concert, can transform entire seascapes and potentially indicate deeper changes happening in the waters below. Let's dive into another persistent ocean mystery, the mega-cryometeor phenomenon. Since the early 2000s, people in coastal regions around the world have reported enormous chunks of ice falling from clear skies. These ice masses, sometimes weighing hundreds of pounds, don't match the pattern of hail or any other known atmospheric ice formation. They often fall during warm weather and from cloudless skies, ruling out normal meteorological explanations. Scientific analysis of these ice chunks has revealed something strange. Their chemical composition matches that of deep ocean water, not the fresh water we'd expect from atmospheric ice formation. Some contain traces of marine microorganisms from the deep sea. And perhaps most puzzling, many exhibit a layered structure, suggesting they form slowly over time, not rapidly as would occur in the atmosphere. The leading scientific explanation involves a complex interaction between ocean and atmosphere. Powerful upward air currents over warm ocean waters might lift water droplets high into the upper atmosphere, where they freeze and aggregate around dust particles. But this doesn't explain the deep-sea chemical signatures or the presence of organisms that never come near the surface. A more controversial theory proposes that these ice masses might be forming underwater, in the boundary layer between differently temperatured water masses. Under certain conditions, supercooled water can exist without freezing until disturbed by a trigger that causes rapid crystallization. The resulting ice, being less dense than water, would normally float to the surface. But what if something were to launch it with enough force to break through the water-air boundary and continue into the sky? Some researchers point to underwater methane eruptions as a possible mechanism. When methane frozen in seafloor deposits suddenly releases, it can create explosive upward jets powerful enough to breach the surface. Could these eruptions occasionally carry masses of deep ocean ice with them, launching them into the air with enough force to reach considerable heights before they fall back to Earth? It sounds far-fetched, but no conventional explanation fully accounts for the observed characteristics of these mysterious ice falls. And so they remain one of the strangest connections between our oceans and our skies. a phenomenon that reminds us how much we still have to learn about the interactions between Earth's major systems. Now let's explore perhaps the most fundamental mystery of all, the ocean's role in consciousness. Throughout human history, across vastly different cultures, the ocean has been associated with altered states of awareness, with access to deeper levels of mind. From ancient Greek oracles, who listened to the waves before delivering prophecies, to Polynesian navigators who claimed to receive guidance directly from the sea itself, humans have long sensed something consciousness-altering about large bodies of water. Modern science has begun to identify some mechanisms that might explain this connection. The negative ions produced by breaking waves have measurable effects on human brain activity, inducing alpha states associated with relaxation and receptivity. The sound frequency of waves, around 10 cycles per second, closely matches the alpha brainwave frequency that characterizes meditative states. And the high concentrations of magnesium, lithium, and other minerals in seawater can affect neurochemistry when absorbed through the skin or inhaled as sea spray. But these explanations feel incomplete when compared to the profound cognitive and perceptual shifts many people report during extended time at sea. Deep-sea divers, solo sailors, and members of traditional maritime cultures often describe experiences that go far beyond simple relaxation or mood enhancement. They report episodes of expanded awareness, dissolution of the self-other boundary, and sometimes communication with what they perceive as the consciousness of the ocean itself. In 2018, neurologists at the University of California conducted a fascinating study. They measured the brain activity of experience-free divers during deep dives and discovered something remarkable. At depths beyond about 100 feet, these divers' brains shifted into patterns that closely resembled advanced meditation states or even certain psychedelic experiences. These patterns emerged regardless of the diver's personal beliefs or expectations. Even more intriguingly, these states weren't simply a response to the physiological stress of the dive. They appeared to be directly proportional to depth, as if proximity to the deep ocean itself was the triggering factor. Some researchers have proposed that water itself, particularly large volumes of it, might have properties we don't yet understand. The theoretical physicist David Bohm suggested that water, with its unique molecular structure and quantum properties, might act as a kind of information storage and transmission medium. Others point to the fact that our brains evolved from aquatic ancestors, and that our neural tissue still bears the chemical signatures of its oceanic origins. Perhaps something in us still resonates with the medium from which we emerged. Whatever the explanation, this connection between human consciousness and the ocean remains one of the most profound and personal mysteries. A reminder that our relationship with the sea isn't just physical or ecological, but might touch something fundamental about how we perceive and experience reality itself. Let's pause here again to acknowledge your commitment to this exploration. We've traveled far together into the mysteries of the deep, and there's still more to discover. If you're finding value in these stories and insights, please consider supporting the channel by liking this video and subscribing. It truly does help me continue creating this content about the mysteries that surround us. And remember, the ocean's mysteries aren't just academic curiosities. They're invitations to wonder, to question, and to remember how vast and strange our world truly is. Now let's continue our journey into the unknown depths. Let's explore one of the most visually stunning ocean mysteries, underwater crop circles. In 1995, divers off the coast of Japan discovered something extraordinary on the seafloor. Perfect circular patterns about 6 feet in diameter, featuring intricate geometric designs etched into the sand. These patterns weren't random. They featured symmetrical ridges, precise geometric shapes, and appeared to be deliberately created. For nearly 20 years, the source of these underwater art pieces remained a complete mystery. Theories range from the effects of currents and underwater springs to evidence of unknown civilizations or even non-human intelligence. Then, in 2013, researchers finally identified the artist, a small pufferfish about 5 inches long. Male pufferfish create these elaborate structures as part of their mating ritual, working 24 hours a day for weeks to craft the perfect circle, using only their fins. The mystery was solved, but it left researchers with new questions. How does a fish with a brain the size of a pea create geometrically perfect circles with intricate designs? How does it maintain such precision without being able to see the entire structure from above? And why did this behavior evolve to be so mathematically precise? Similar mysteries have emerged with other marine life. Consider the perfectly hexagonal territories maintained by certain coral reef fish, or the complex geometric patterns created by groups of sand-dwelling eels. These behaviors reveal a mathematical precision that seems beyond the cognitive capabilities we typically attribute to these animals. Some researchers have suggested that these geometrical behaviors might represent a kind of intelligence we don't yet recognize, one based not on abstract reasoning as we understand it, but on a direct, intuitive understanding of mathematical principles. Others propose that these creatures might be tapping into fundamental patterns that exist throughout nature, expressions of the same mathematical relationships that govern everything from the spiral of galaxies to the growth patterns of plants. Whatever the explanation, these underwater geometricians remind us that intelligence and creativity in our oceans might take forms utterly different from our human understanding. Forms that have been evolving and expressing themselves for millions of years before humans ever set foot on this planet. Now, let's explore what might be the most personal ocean mystery of all, the strange effect that the deep ocean seems to have on human consciousness. Throughout maritime history, there have been countless reports of sailors experiencing unusual psychological phenomena when spending extended periods at sea. These range from straightforward hallucinations that might be explained by vitamin deficiencies or sleep deprivation to more complex shared experiences that defy conventional explanation. Deep-sea divers and submarine crews report similar effects, often describing a sensation of expanded awareness or altered perception that occurs at depth. Many report experiencing a profound sense of not being alone, even when physically isolated. Others describe receiving thoughts or impressions that don't seem to originate from their own minds. In 2019, a research team studying the psychological effects of isolation in preparation for long-duration space missions conducted an experiment using a deep-sea habitat off the coast of Florida. Participants lived in the underwater facility for 30 days, with regular psychological evaluations throughout. What the researchers discovered was unexpected. Almost all participants reported experiencing what they described as non-self thoughts after about 2 weeks in the habitat. These weren't experienced as hallucinations or delusions, but rather as clearly identifiable thoughts that subjects recognized as not originating from their own consciousness. Even more intriguing, when researchers compared the journals of different participants, they found numerous instances where individuals had recorded remarkably similar, non-self thoughts at approximately the same time, despite being in different compartments of the habitat with no communication between them. The lead researcher on the project, Dr. Elena Markov, later wrote that the results suggest either an unknown form of communication between isolated individuals in underwater environments, or some effect of the deep ocean environment on human consciousness that we don't yet understand. Traditional explanations for these phenomena include the effects of nitrogen narcosis, oxygen toxicity, or the psychological impact of the alien underwater environment. But these don't account for the shared nature of many of these experiences, or the fact that they often occur in conditions where physiological explanations like gas narcosis can be ruled out. Some researchers have proposed more speculative explanations. The idea that water itself, particularly salt water, might be capable of storing or transmitting information in ways we don't yet understand. Or that the electromagnetic fields generated by ocean currents might interact with the human brain in subtle ways, creating shared perceptual effects. Whatever the explanation, this relationship between human consciousness and the deep ocean environment remains one of the most personal and profound mysteries of the sea. A reminder that when we venture into the depths, we're not just exploring an external world, but potentially discovering new dimensions of our own awareness. Let's now explore a phenomenon that has puzzled sailors and maritime researchers for centuries: the existence of rogue holes in the ocean. Unlike rogue waves, which rise above the surface, rogue holes are their opposite, sudden, temporary depressions in the ocean surface that can drop over 100 feet below the surrounding water level. Throughout maritime history, there have been accounts of ships encountering what sailors described as the ocean opening up beneath them, moments when their vessels suddenly dropped as if the water itself had vanished from beneath their hulls. Most of these historical accounts were dismissed as exaggeration or misperception. Until 2006, when a research vessel in the North Atlantic encountered and documented the phenomenon. Equipped with precision laser altimeters designed to measure wave heights, the ship recorded a sudden depression in the ocean's surface approximately 90 feet deep and 200 feet across. The entire event lasted less than 30 seconds before the sea returned to its normal state. Unlike rogue waves, which scientists now understand are caused by constructive interference between multiple wave systems, rogue holes remain poorly understood. Some oceanographers suggest they might result from the opposite effect, destructive interference, where wave troughs perfectly align. Others propose more exotic mechanisms involving localized changes in water density, or even brief gravitational anomalies. What makes these phenomena particularly mysterious is their apparent connection to certain oceanic regions. Reports cluster around areas known for other unusual phenomena, particularly parts of the Bermuda Triangle and the Dragon's Triangle off Japan. In these regions, rogue holes seem to correlate with electromagnetic anomalies and unusual seafloor topography. Some researchers have proposed that underwater landslides or sudden methane gas releases from the seafloor might create these temporary depressions. The rapid release of gas bubbles could potentially reduce water density enough to create a momentary void in the surface. But this doesn't explain all reported characteristics, particularly the perfect circular shape described in many accounts. Whatever their cause, rogue holes represent one of the ocean's most dramatic and least understood phenomena. A reminder that the seemingly solid surface of the sea can, under certain conditions, behave in ways that defy our intuitive understanding of how water should move. Let's explore one of the most persistent mysteries of the deep underwater humanoids. Since the earliest days of seafaring, sailors from cultures around the world have reported encounters with humanoid beings in the ocean. These aren't the mermaids of folklore, with fishtails and flowing hair. These are described as fully humanoid figures that appear perfectly adapted to underwater environments. Most accounts describe beings with human-like torsos, arms, and facial features, but with slightly enlarged eyes, webbed hands, and skin tones ranging from pale blue-white to deep gray. For centuries, these reports were dismissed as superstition or the product of oxygen-deprived brains. Until the late 1960s, when the Soviet Navy began collecting and classifying such sightings from their submarine crews. The resulting report, only declassified in the early 2000s, documented over 200 encounters between Soviet military personnel and what they termed underwater adapted humanoids or UHs. The encounters shared consistent features. The entities moved without apparent swimming motions, seemed unaffected by water pressure at extreme depths, and showed curiosity rather than hostility toward human vessels. Most intriguingly, they were frequently reported near underwater structures of unknown origin. Similar reports have emerged from the navies of other nations, though few have been officially acknowledged. In 1992, American oceanographer Dr. William Morrison documented an encounter while conducting research in the Puerto Rico Trench. His team's submersible captured several minutes of footage showing what appears to be a bipedal figure moving at a depth of over 8,000 feet, in conditions that should be instantly fatal to any human diver. The figure approaches the submersible, examines it briefly, then disappears into the darkness. The footage, while grainy, shows no obvious diving equipment or oxygen supply. Conventional science offers no explanation for how humanoid life could evolve or survive in deep ocean environments. The pressure alone would crush any air-breathing organism, while the cold and darkness would seem to preclude the evolution of human-like features. Some researchers have proposed the possibility of an advanced aquatic civilization that developed technology to overcome these natural limitations, underwater bases with controlled environments, or even biological engineering of their own physiology. Others suggest these sightings might represent brief glimpses of parallel evolutionary paths, branches of early hominids that returned to the sea and developed along entirely different lines than our land-dwelling ancestors. Is any of this likely? Perhaps not. But in an ocean where new species are discovered every year, where creatures exist that can survive conditions we once thought impossible for complex life, can we really rule anything out with absolute certainty? The ocean keeps its secrets well, revealing them only when it chooses, and often in ways that challenge our understanding of what's possible. Now let's talk about a mystery that lies at the intersection of maritime history and unexplained phenomena, the temporal anomalies associated with certain regions of our oceans. Throughout seafaring history, there have been accounts of ships experiencing unusual time distortions while traversing certain waters. Crews report watches and chronometers suddenly running at different speeds, or days seeming to pass in hours, or vice versa. Most famous are the cases where ships arrive at their destinations far earlier or later than should have been possible, even accounting for favorable winds or currents. In 1928, the Dutch freighter SS Orang Medan was found adrift in the Strait of Malacca. The entire crew was dead, their bodies unmarked, but their faces frozen in expressions of extreme terror. The ship's log revealed something strange. According to the timestamps in the captain's final entries, the vessel had covered over 400 nautical miles in just under 4 hours, a speed completely impossible for a vessel of that era. The ship's chronometer was still running, but had fallen behind the actual time by exactly 24 hours. As the rescue crew was preparing to tow the derelict vessel to port, a fire broke out in the cargo hold, and the Orang Medan sank, taking its mysteries to the bottom of the sea. More recently, in 2009, a pleasure yacht was discovered drifting off the coast of Australia. The 3-person crew was missing, but the ship was otherwise intact. The yacht's GPS log showed something impossible. In the span of 20 minutes, the vessel had apparently jumped nearly 200 miles from one location to another, with no record of the journey between points. All clocks aboard the yacht, including battery-powered ones, had stopped at exactly the same time. Conventional explanations for these temporal anomalies range from equipment malfunction to human error in record-keeping. Some oceanographers suggest that certain combinations of current, temperature, and electromagnetic conditions might affect electronic timing devices. But these don't account for the mechanical chronometers used in earlier centuries, or the consistent patterns of these anomalies in specific ocean regions. Some theoretical physicists have proposed more exotic explanations. The concept of gravity wells or localized distortions in space-time created by massive underwater structures or unusual geological formations. Or the possibility that certain regions of the ocean might represent thin points between dimensions, where the rules of time and space as we understand them become temporarily fluid. Is this likely? No. But the persistence of these reports across centuries, from sailors using entirely different navigational and timekeeping technologies, suggests something unusual occurs in certain parts of our oceans. Something that affects not just our perception of time, but perhaps time itself. Let's explore a mystery that sounds like science fiction, but has puzzled oceanographers for decades: underwater light wheels. Since at least the 16th century, sailors in the Indian Ocean and South China Sea have reported enormous wheels of light spinning beneath the surface of the water. These phenomena typically appear at night and can span up to half a mile in diameter. Witnesses describe perfect circles of light rotating either clockwise or counterclockwise, with spokes radiating from a central hub like a cosmic wheel, turning in the depths. For centuries, these accounts were dismissed as sailors' superstitions or misidentified bioluminescence. Until 1909, when the crew of the British vessel SS Patna observed and meticulously documented a light wheel in the Indian Ocean. The ship's captain, meteorologist, and first officer independently created sketches and measurements, noting that the wheel was approximately 500 yards in diameter and completed one full rotation every 12 seconds. Modern science has proposed several explanations for these phenomena. Some suggest they might be caused by bioluminescent organisms responding to underwater disturbances, perhaps creating circular patterns due to the way water currents propagate. Others point to potential connections with seismic activity, suggesting that electrical discharges from the seafloor might stimulate bioluminescent organisms in circular patterns. But none of these explanations fully account for the perfect geometric precision reported by witnesses or the mechanical regularity of the rotation. In 2008, a research vessel in the South China Sea captured video footage of a light wheel approximately 300 feet in diameter. Analysis of the footage revealed something strange. The light appeared to be monochromatic, emitting at a very specific wavelength that doesn't match any known bioluminescent organism. Even more puzzling, the rotation maintained perfect timing despite passing surface waves and changing currents. Some researchers have proposed more speculative explanations. The possibility that these wheels might be the surface manifestation of human-made structures or technology on the seafloor, or even evidence of non-human technology operating in our oceans. Others suggest they might represent natural phenomena we don't yet understand, perhaps related to the electromagnetic properties of seawater or interactions between Earth's magnetic field and certain geological formations. Whatever their cause, light wheels remain one of the most visually spectacular and least understood ocean phenomena. The reminder that beneath the apparently simple surface of the sea, complex and beautiful mysteries continue to unfold. Now let's explore what might be the most disturbing ocean mystery of all: the phenomenon of underwater screams. Since the early days of hydrophone technology, underwater microphones used to detect submarine activity, naval operators have occasionally recorded sounds that they describe as human-like screaming. These sounds don't match any known marine mammal vocalization, mechanical noise, or geological process. They typically occur in the deep ocean, often in trenches or abyssal plains, far from shipping lanes or human activity. In the 1970s, the U.S. Navy detected a series of these sounds in the Mariana Trench. The recordings were classified for decades before being partially released in the early 2000s. What makes these sounds so disturbing isn't just their resemblance to human vocalizations, it's their pattern and structure. They often occur in sequences that suggest communication, regular intervals, repeated patterns, call and response structures. Analysis of these sounds reveals frequency ranges and modulation patterns that are theoretically impossible for any known deep-sea creature to produce. Yet they clearly originate from biological rather than geological sources. In 2012, researchers from the Woods Hole Oceanographic Institution recorded similar sounds near the boundary of the North Atlantic and Arctic Oceans. These particular vocalizations exhibited something even more unsettling. They appeared to change in response to the presence of the research vessel, as if whatever was making them was aware it was being listened to. Conventional scientific explanations include the possibility of undiscovered marine mammals with unusual vocalization capabilities, or perhaps known creatures producing sounds that become distorted by the unique acoustic properties of deep ocean environments. But some marine biologists have proposed more radical possibilities. The idea that these might represent a form of communication from intelligent marine life that has evolved along entirely different lines than surface-dwelling mammals. Creatures adapted to the extreme conditions of the deep ocean, with sensory and communication systems, unlike anything we've cataloged. Is this likely? Perhaps not. But in an ocean where new species are discovered every year, where life exists in conditions once thought impossible, who can say with certainty what might be calling from the darkness? Whatever the source of these sounds, they remind us that the ocean's greatest mysteries might not be what we can see, but what we can hear. Voices from the deep that speak in languages we don't yet understand, from entities we have yet to discover. Let's explore a mystery that sits at the boundary between ocean science and mythology, the phenomenon known as the devilfish. Since at least the 19th century, whalers and fishermen in the North Atlantic have reported encounters with a marine creature that defies conventional categorization. Not a whale, not a shark, not a squid, but something that seems to combine features of all three. These accounts typically describe an animal between 40 and 60 feet long, with a body shape similar to a manta ray but with multiple appendages and a distinctly non-fish-like behavior pattern. Witnesses report it moving with apparent intelligence, sometimes circling ships for hours or even following them for days. Most encounters end with the creature simply disappearing into the depths, but some have taken more disturbing turns. In 1876, the whaling ship Essex reported being rammed by something the captain described as like a great flat-bodied devil with a dozen writhing arms. The ship sustained serious damage but managed to return to port. Similar reports emerged throughout the early 20th century, with several fishing vessels reporting attacks by creatures matching this general description. Conventional marine biology offers no known species that matches these accounts. The giant manta ray, while similar in basic shape, reaches a maximum size of about 23 feet and possesses no appendages that could be described as arms. The giant squid has the appendages, but an entirely different body structure. Some researchers have suggested these sightings might represent misidentifications of known animals, perhaps giant rays or squids seen under poor visibility conditions. Others propose the possibility of now extinct marine species that might have survived longer than the fossil record suggests. But perhaps the most intriguing theory comes from marine biologists studying the deep scattering layer, a zone in the ocean where countless organisms rise toward the surface at night and descend to the depths during daylight. They suggest that what witnesses might be seeing is not a single organism, but a coordinated colony of smaller creatures moving together for protection or hunting efficiency. This could explain the unusual combination of features and behaviors reported. Whatever the truth behind these sightings, the devilfish remains one of the ocean's most persistent cryptozoological mysteries. A reminder that in the vastness of our oceans, there may still be creatures that defy our current categories and understanding. Creatures that blur the line between the known and the unknown, between science and legend. Now let's explore a mystery that has puzzled researchers for decades, the underwater graveyards of the Pacific. Throughout the vast expanse of the Pacific Ocean, divers and researchers have occasionally discovered something macabre on the seafloor, perfectly arranged patterns of human and animal remains. These arrangements don't match any known burial practice from Pacific island cultures. The bones are typically laid out in geometric patterns, circles, spirals, or even more complex arrangements that suggest deliberate placement. What makes these sites particularly mysterious is their location. Many are found at depths and distances from land that would have been impossible for traditional Pacific seafarers to reach for ceremonial purposes. Some lie more than 100 feet below the surface, in locations that would have required modern diving equipment to access. Yet carbon dating of the remains often places them at 200–300 years old, long before such technology existed. Even more puzzling is the mix of remains found at these sites. Human bones are frequently intermingled with those of marine animals not typically associated with funerary practices, deep-sea fish, sharks, and in some cases, species that remain unidentified. In 2003, researchers discovered one such site near the Marshall Islands. The arrangement consisted of a perfect circle of human skulls, approximately 30 feet in diameter, with various other bones forming intricate patterns within the circle. At the center lay a single complete human skeleton surrounded by the vertebrae of what appeared to be several large marine creatures. The entire arrangement rested at a depth of about 80 feet, on a seafloor otherwise devoid of human artifacts or remains. Carbon dating placed the human remains at approximately 250 years old, while some of the marine remains appeared to be significantly older. Traditional explanations include the possibility that these might represent the remains of shipwrecks, with currents arranging the bones in seemingly deliberate patterns. Or perhaps previously unknown funerary practices from Pacific cultures, where bodies were intentionally placed in shallow ocean waters and later shifted to deeper locations by storms or currents. But neither explanation fully accounts for the geometric precision of these arrangements or their presence in locations so far from historical shipping routes or island communities. Some anthropologists have proposed more speculative theories. The possibility that these might represent sacred sites created by cultures with diving capabilities more advanced than the historical record suggests. Or perhaps evidence of contact between Pacific Islanders and unknown seafaring peoples with different technological capabilities and cultural practices. Whatever their origin, these underwater graveyards remain one of the Pacific's most eerie and persistent mysteries. A silent testimony to human activity in places where, by all conventional understanding, humans should not have been able to go. Let's explore a mystery that combines natural wonder with inexplicable phenomena, the singing caves of the Mediterranean. Along the coastlines of Greece, Italy, and Croatia, there are numerous sea caves that produce unusual acoustic effects when waves enter them. Many generate low, resonant tones similar to pipe organs or wind instruments, creating natural music that changes with the tide and weather conditions. These singing caves have been known since ancient times, often featuring in local folklore and mythology. But what makes certain caves particularly mysterious isn't just their musical qualities, but the specific patterns of sound they produce. In several locations, most notably along the coast of Crete, these caves don't simply generate random tones based on wave action. They produce what sound distinctly like structured melodies, repeating sequences of notes that maintain their pattern regardless of changes in wave intensity or frequency. In 2017, a team of acoustic engineers and musicologists conducted a study of one such cave near Metalla, Crete. What they discovered defied conventional explanation. The cave produced a sequence of 7 distinct tones that repeated in the same order, regardless of tide conditions. When transcribed to musical notation, this sequence closely resembled a musical mode used in ancient Greek compositions, specifically the Dorian mode. What makes this particularly puzzling is that the cave structure doesn't appear to have been artificially modified. Geological analysis suggests it formed naturally through standard erosion processes over thousands of years. Yet somehow, it produces sounds that match human musical systems with remarkable precision. Some researchers suggest this might represent an extraordinary coincidence, natural processes happening to create structures that resonate at frequencies pleasing to the human ear. Others propose that these caves might have been subtly modified by ancient civilizations, perhaps with small, nearly undetectable alterations to enhance certain tones or suppress others. But a more intriguing possibility has emerged from the field of archaeoacoustics, the study of sound in archaeological contexts. Some researchers suggest that ancient musical systems might not have been human inventions imposed on nature, but rather human discoveries of patterns already present in the natural world. Perhaps the musical scales that form the basis of Western music weren't created by human composers, but discovered by listening to the songs already being sung by the sea and the earth. Whatever the explanation, these singing caves remain one of the Mediterranean's most haunting mysteries. A place where the boundary between natural phenomenon and artistic creation blurs, and where the ocean itself seems to speak in a language remarkably similar to our own. I hope you're still with me, brave listener, because we're about to explore one of the most disturbing ocean mysteries of all, the phenomenon known as the hum. Since at least the 1970s, people living in certain coastal regions around the world have reported hearing a persistent, low-frequency humming sound that seems to emanate from the ocean. This phenomenon is particularly common along the Pacific coast of North America, certain areas of the UK, and parts of New Zealand. What makes the hum so mysterious isn't just its unexplained origin, but its peculiar characteristics. Only about 2% of the population in affected areas can hear it. It's typically more audible at night, and it seems to affect people regardless of their hearing ability in other frequency ranges. Some deaf individuals report feeling the hum rather than hearing it. In 2003, researchers from the University of Washington detected an underwater sound source that corresponded with reports of the hum in the Seattle area. The frequency measured approximately 7 Hz, just below the range of normal human hearing, but capable of creating resonance effects in human tissue. The source appeared to be located somewhere in the deep Pacific, but attempts to triangulate its exact position were unsuccessful. The signal would disappear whenever research vessels approached the estimated location, only to resume once they moved away. Conventional explanations include the possibility that the hum might be generated by industrial activity, perhaps distant oil rigs or submarine communication systems. Others suggest it could be a natural phenomenon, possibly related to interaction between ocean currents and certain geological formations. But neither explanation accounts for the apparent responsive nature of the sound source, its tendency to cease when actively investigated. Nor do they explain why only a small percentage of people can detect it, or why this ability seems to cross the usual boundaries of hearing capability. Some researchers have proposed more speculative theories. The possibility that the hum might represent a form of communication from unknown entities in the deep ocean. Or perhaps a natural warning system, an infrasound signal generated by geological processes that precede seismic events. Indigenous traditions from several coastal cultures contain references to the ocean's voice, or the warning sound, described in terms remarkably similar to modern accounts of the hum. These traditions often associate the sound with impending natural disasters or significant environmental changes. Whatever its source, the hum remains one of our ocean's most personal mysteries, an experience that divides those who can perceive it from those who cannot, and raises profound questions about the relationship between human perception and oceanic phenomena. A reminder that the sea might be speaking to us in ways that only some can hear, carrying messages we've only begun to decipher. Let's pause here again to acknowledge your commitment to this exploration. We've traveled far together into the mysteries of the deep, and there's still more to discover. If you're finding value in these stories and insights, please consider supporting the channel by liking this video and subscribing. It truly does help me continue creating this content about the mysteries that surround us. And remember, the ocean's mysteries aren't just academic curiosities, they're invitations to wonder, to question, and to remember how vast and strange our world truly is. Now, let's continue our journey into the unknown depths. Let's explore a mystery that combines ancient legend with modern science, the phenomenon of living islands. Throughout Pacific maritime traditions, there are accounts of islands that move, that appear and disappear, or that seem to be alive in some fundamental way. These weren't understood as simple mirages or navigational errors, but as actual islands that behave differently from normal landmasses. For centuries, these accounts were dismissed as myth or misperception, until the early 2000s, when satellite imagery began to reveal something strange in remote parts of the Pacific. Researchers identified several small islands that appeared to change position over time, moving up to several miles over periods of months or years. What makes these movements particularly mysterious is that they don't match the slow drift of normal geological processes. These islands move too quickly for plate tectonics, yet too slowly and deliberately for floating vegetation mats. In 2015, marine biologists investigating one such moving island near Tonga made an astonishing discovery. What appeared from the surface to be a small rocky island was actually a massive colonial organism, something like a coral reef, but composed of a previously unknown type of coelenterate, similar to certain deep-sea siphonophores. The colony had created a surface structure that accumulated soil and could support small plants, creating the appearance of a natural island. But unlike a true island, the entire structure could slowly relocate by coordinated movement of the colonial organisms beneath. Similar discoveries have since been made in other parts of the Pacific, though none quite as large as the Tongan example. These findings have led researchers to reconsider many traditional Pacific navigation chants and myths, which often contain references to islands with specific behaviors or personalities. What once seemed like poetic personification might actually represent accurate observations of these living island systems. Some marine biologists have proposed that these colonial organisms might represent one of the oldest and largest life forms on Earth, potentially thousands of years old, and operating on timescales that make their movements imperceptible to casual observation. Others suggest they might be a relatively recent evolutionary development, perhaps responding to changing ocean conditions by developing mobility. Whatever their origin or nature, these living islands represent one of the most profound challenges to our understanding of what constitutes an individual organism. They blur the boundary between geology and biology, between island and creature. A reminder that even our most basic categories, land and sea, living and non-living, might be more fluid than we once believed. Now let's explore one of the most persistent mysteries of the deep, the phenomenon of underwater lights. Since the earliest days of deep-sea exploration, submariners and researchers have reported seeing unexplained light sources in the ocean depths. These aren't the familiar blue-green bioluminescence produced by countless marine organisms. These are structured, often colorful light displays that don't match any known biological light source. In the 1960s, the deep-sea research vessel Alvin documented numerous such sightings during its exploratory dives. Crew members described seeing formations of amber or reddish lights moving in patterns that suggested intelligent control. Unlike the chaotic reactive patterns of most bioluminescent organisms, these lights maintain formation even when approached, sometimes appearing to observe the submersible before departing. Similar reports have come from deep-sea exploration vehicles in various parts of the world's oceans, particularly in the deeper trenches and abyssal plains. What makes these phenomena particularly mysterious is their appearance at depths where photosynthesis is impossible, where evolutionary pressure would not favor the development of eyes or light-producing organs. Yet the lights move as if they can see, reacting to obstacles and to the presence of human vehicles in ways that suggest visual perception. Conventional science offers several potential explanations. Some researchers suggest these might be previously unknown bioluminescent organisms with more complex nervous systems than we typically associate with deep-sea life. Others propose they could be manifestations of geothermal or chemical processes that produce light as a byproduct. But neither explanation fully accounts for the structured, apparently intelligent movement patterns frequently reported. In 2018, a research expedition to the Java Trench captured video footage of one such light formation at a depth of approximately 23,000 feet. The lights, approximately a dozen in number, were arranged in a perfect circle that maintained its formation while moving horizontally through the water. When the research vehicle approached, the formation rotated to face it directly, maintained position for several minutes, then accelerated away at a speed estimated at over 40 knots, far faster than any known deep-sea organism can travel. Some marine biologists have proposed more speculative explanations. The possibility that these might represent a form of deep-sea intelligence that evolved along entirely different lines than surface life. Organisms that communicate and perceive their world primarily through light rather than sound or chemical signals. Others suggest they might be manifestations of human technology, perhaps autonomous research devices deployed by other nations or organizations and kept classified. Whatever their source, these deep-sea lights remain one of the ocean's most tantalizing mysteries. A reminder that in the darkness of the deep, there are things that create their own illumination. Things that move with purpose and pattern, following rules we've yet to understand. Let's explore a mystery that has puzzled sailors and oceanographers for centuries: sudden color changes in the ocean. Throughout maritime history, there have been accounts of the sea abruptly changing color in ways that can't be explained by normal factors, like algal blooms, sediment suspension, or changing light conditions. These color shifts typically occur in deep water, far from coastal influences, and can affect vast areas, sometimes hundreds of square miles within minutes. In 1902, the HMS Falcon reported sailing through a section of the South Pacific where the normally blue water suddenly turned a deep purple-black color. The discoloration extended as far as the crew could see and persisted for the several hours it took to traverse the affected area. Water samples taken at the time showed no unusual biological activity or chemical composition. Yet the color change was dramatic enough to be clearly visible and concerning to the experienced crew. Similar incidents have been reported throughout the 20th and 21st centuries, with colors ranging from milk white to red to black, often changing rapidly and without apparent cause. Modern oceanography offers several potential explanations. Some researchers suggest these might be massive but short-lived algal blooms, triggered by sudden upwellings of nutrient-rich water from the deep. Others propose they could be related to submarine volcanic activity, with certain mineral compounds temporarily changing water color before dispersing. But neither explanation accounts for the rapidity of these color changes, or their occurrence in areas with no known volcanic activity or conditions that would support massive algal growth. In 2014, researchers from the Scripps Institution of Oceanography observed one such color change event in the Central Pacific. Using satellite imagery and direct sampling, they documented an area of approximately 300 square miles, changing from normal blue to a deep crimson red over a period of less than 40 minutes. Water samples showed no unusual biological activity, no volcanic compounds, and no chemical abnormalities that could explain the dramatic color shift. Even more puzzling, the affected area maintained distinct boundaries that didn't disperse as would be expected if the coloration were caused by a substance in the water. It was as if an invisible wall separated the crimson water from the normal blue surrounding it. After approximately 3 hours, the water returned to its normal color just as rapidly as it had changed, again without any detectable dispersal pattern. Some oceanographers have proposed more speculative explanations for these phenomena. The possibility that certain quantum effects might temporarily alter the light absorption properties of water molecules themselves, changing how they interact with sunlight without requiring any actual pigment or particulate matter. Others suggest these might be optical effects caused by temporary changes in the atmosphere above these regions, creating what amounts to a localized filter that changes the apparent color of the water below. But perhaps the most intriguing explanation comes from researchers studying the relationship between Earth's oceans and its electromagnetic field. They propose that certain fluctuations in the planet's field might temporarily affect how water molecules arrange themselves at a microscopic level, changing their optical properties without altering their chemical composition. Whatever the cause, these color-shifting seas remain one of the ocean's most visible and dramatic mysteries. A reminder that even something as fundamental as the color of water, something we take for granted every day, can suddenly transform in ways that challenge our understanding of how the physical world operates. Let's explore a mystery that combines ancient legend with modern science, the phenomenon of the green flash. For centuries, sailors have reported seeing a brilliant green light appear just as the sun dips below the horizon at sea. This green flash lasts only a few seconds, but is said to bring good luck to those who witness it. Many dismiss these accounts as sailor superstition or optical illusion, until the development of high-speed photography confirmed that the green flash is indeed real. It's caused by atmospheric refraction, separating the sun's light into different colors as it passes through layers of air with varying temperatures and densities. But what remains mysterious isn't the basic mechanism of the green flash, but rather its association with certain unexplained maritime phenomena. Historical records from various seafaring cultures show a striking correlation between green flash sightings and subsequent reports of unusual ocean behavior, sudden calms, unexpected currents, or even more dramatic events like the appearance of unknown islands or creatures. In the logs of 18th and 19th century exploration vessels, green flash observations are frequently followed within 24 hours by reports of sea mysteries or uncommon sightings. The frequency of this correlation far exceeds what would be expected by random chance. Some researchers have proposed that the atmospheric conditions that create the green flash might also affect other aspects of the ocean atmosphere system, perhaps triggering changes in marine behavior or creating conditions where certain phenomena become more visible. Others suggest a more speculative possibility that the green flash might momentarily thin the boundary between different states of reality, creating a brief window where aspects of the ocean normally hidden from human perception become briefly visible. Traditional Polynesian navigation traditions speak of the green flash as the eye-opening or the revealing moment, describing it not just as an atmospheric phenomenon, but as a literal change in the observer's ability to perceive the true nature of the sea. Similar concepts appear in maritime traditions from the Mediterranean to the Arctic, suggesting a cross-cultural recognition of something more significant than a simple optical effect. Is there a genuine connection between the green flash and these subsequent ocean mysteries? Or is it simply that sailors who witnessed this rare phenomenon became more attentive, more open to seeing the unusual in the hours that followed? The answer remains elusive, lost somewhere between science and superstition, between the measurable physics of light and the subjective experience of those who spend their lives upon the sea. Now let's delve into what might be one of the most terrifying ocean mysteries, the phenomenon of disappearing water. Throughout maritime history, there have been accounts of the ocean suddenly and temporarily receding, exposing areas of seafloor that should be hundreds of feet underwater. Unlike the predictable recession associated with tsunamis, these events happen in deep water, far from shore, and don't correspond with seismic activity or other known triggers. In 1978, the crew of a fishing vessel in the Gulf of Alaska reported that the water around their ship suddenly began to recede, as if being drained from below. Within minutes, their vessel sat on bare seafloor, surrounded in all directions by a circular wall of water approximately half a mile away. The exposed seafloor reportedly contained objects and structures that shouldn't have been there, stone formations arranged in geometric patterns, and what the captain described as metal objects of obvious artificial origin. After approximately 20 minutes, the water returned as suddenly as it had vanished, nearly capsizing the vessel with its force. Similar incidents have been reported in various parts of the world's oceans, though rarely with witnesses who survived to tell the tale. Many missing vessels are believed to have been lost to these events, drawn down when the water returned with catastrophic force. Conventional science offers no explanation for how water could temporarily vanish from a section of deep ocean. Some researchers have proposed extreme versions of underwater gas releases, suggesting that massive methane eruptions from the seafloor might temporarily displace seawater in a localized area. Others suggest powerful but brief gravitational anomalies, perhaps related to interactions between Earth's magnetic field and solar activity. But neither explanation accounts for the perfect circularity described in most of these events, or the often reported presence of artificial structures on the exposed seafloor. Some marine geologists have proposed a more radical possibility that these might represent momentary activations of ancient technology embedded in the seafloor. Systems designed to temporarily clear water from an area for purposes we can only guess at, lying dormant for centuries or millennia before sporadically activating. Is this likely? Perhaps not. But the consistent pattern of these reports across different oceans and time periods suggests something more than simple misperception or natural phenomenon. Something that, however rarely, can make the ocean itself briefly vanish, revealing what normally lies hidden beneath its protective cover. Let's explore a mystery that has both terrified and fascinated deep-sea explorers, the wall. In certain remote parts of the world's oceans, submersibles and ROVs have occasionally encountered what appears to be a vast vertical structure rising from the seafloor toward the surface. This feature, commonly referred to as the wall by those who've encountered it, doesn't appear on any bathymetric charts and seems to defy geological explanation. What makes the wall particularly mysterious isn't just its unexpected presence, but its characteristics. Witnesses describe a perfectly vertical surface, smooth to the point of appearing polished, extending from the seafloor up toward the surface for thousands of feet. Unlike natural underwater cliffs, which show irregularities and signs of erosion, the wall appears unnaturally uniform. And unlike human-made structures, it shows no visible joints, seams, or construction methods. In 2011, a research submersible conducting a geological survey near the Mariana Trench encountered a section of the wall at a depth of approximately 10,000 feet. Video footage shows the submersible's lights illuminating a perfectly flat, vertical surface that extends beyond the range of visibility in all directions. Sonar readings suggested the structure continued upward for at least another 15,000 feet and extended horizontally for several miles. Attempts to take samples from the wall's surface were unsuccessful. The submersible sampling tools were unable to penetrate or even scratch the material, which appeared dark gray or black and reflected light in an unusual way, seeming to absorb rather than reflect the submersible's powerful lights. Similar encounters have been reported by other deep-sea exploration vehicles in various parts of the world's oceans, primarily in the deepest trenches and abyssal plains. In each case, the description remains remarkably consistent. A vertical structure of apparently artificial origin, composed of an unidentifiable material of extraordinary hardness and durability. Conventional geology offers no explanation for how such a structure could form naturally. Some researchers have proposed the possibility of previously unknown human activity, perhaps classified military installations or ancient structures whose origins have been lost to time. Others suggest more radical explanations, including the possibility of non-human technology or even interdimensional phenomena manifesting in the extreme conditions of the deep ocean. Whatever its origin or purpose, the wall remains one of the deep ocean's most persistent and unsettling mysteries. A structure that by all accounts shouldn't be there, yet has been independently witnessed by multiple exploration vehicles and crews. A reminder that in the most remote parts of our oceans, there may be features that defy not just our maps, but our entire understanding of what should exist in those lightless depths. Let's explore one of the most widespread and persistent ocean mysteries, the phenomenon of lost time at sea. Throughout maritime history, there have been countless accounts of ships and their crews experiencing inexplicable temporal anomalies while at sea. Journeys that should take days are completed in hours, or voyages of a few hours stretch into days or weeks with no apparent cause. Unlike simple navigational errors or unusual currents, these events involve actual discrepancies in the passage of time itself, often verified by multiple chronometers and independent observers. In 1991, a yacht competing in a trans-Pacific race reported a particularly dramatic instance of this phenomenon. According to the ship's log, GPS data, and the independent testimony of all 4 crew members, the vessel sailed through a bank of unusual fog and emerged 24 hours later, having covered over 500 nautical miles, a distance that should have taken at least 4 days at their maximum possible speed. All timepieces on board, including mechanical watches not dependent on batteries or electrical systems, showed the same temporal jump. The crew reported experiencing no sense of unusual speed or motion during this period, simply a compression of time itself. Similar incidents have been reported by naval vessels, commercial ships, and pleasure craft throughout the world's oceans, with particular concentrations in the deep Pacific, parts of the Atlantic near the Bermuda region, and certain areas of the Southern Ocean. Conventional science offers no mechanism by which time itself could be compressed or expanded in this way. Some researchers have proposed psychological explanations, suggesting that certain ocean conditions might affect human perception of time, creating a subjective experience of temporal distortion. But this doesn't account for the consistency of these experiences across different crews, vessels, and time periods, nor the objective evidence from navigation systems and chronometers. Others point to potential interactions between Earth's magnetic field and certain ocean conditions, suggesting that localized distortions in the field might temporarily affect how time itself flows within a specific area. While speculative, this theory aligns with certain principles in quantum physics regarding the relationship between electromagnetic fields and space-time. Perhaps most intriguing are the correlations between these temporal anomalies and certain atmospheric conditions. Analysis of hundreds of reported cases shows that unusual fog banks, unexpected calms, and distinctive cloud formations frequently precede these events, as if these visible phenomena mark the boundaries of regions where the normal rules of time temporarily weaken or change. Whatever the explanation, these temporal shifts remain one of the most persistent and well-documented ocean mysteries. A reminder that at sea, even something as fundamental and unchanging as time itself can sometimes bend or flow differently than we expect. Let's explore a particularly disturbing ocean mystery, the phenomenon known as the disappearing. Since at least the early 20th century, there have been accounts of people vanishing from vessels at sea under circumstances that defy conventional explanation. Unlike typical man-overboard situations, these disappearances occur in calm conditions, often with multiple witnesses present, and frequently involve individuals who were nowhere near the edge of the vessel. One of the most well-documented cases occurred in 1997 aboard a cruise ship in the North Atlantic. A passenger was recorded by security cameras walking down a central enclosed corridor. Footage shows the individual walking normally, when they suddenly and instantaneously vanish from the frame. The camera showed no malfunction, no jump in the footage, simply the person's abrupt disappearance between one frame and the next. Despite an extensive search, the passenger was never found aboard the ship or in the surrounding waters. Similar incidents have been reported on various vessels, from small private boats to large naval ships, with particular concentrations in certain ocean regions, notably parts of the Pacific and areas near the Bermuda Triangle. What makes these cases particularly mysterious is that they often occur in full view of witnesses, who report not a person falling overboard, but simply ceasing to exist before their eyes. Conventional explanations include the possibility of elaborate hoaxes, mass hallucinations, or unreported suicides. But the consistency of these accounts across different vessels, crews, and time periods suggests something more unusual may be occurring. Some researchers have proposed theoretical mechanisms involving localized quantum effects, brief fluctuations in the fabric of reality itself, that might cause a person to shift between different possible states of existence. Others suggest these disappearances might be related to temporary thinning of boundaries between dimensions, perhaps triggered by specific combinations of electromagnetic fields, water conditions, and cosmic radiation. While highly speculative, these theories attempt to address the most disturbing aspect of these cases, the apparent violation of physical conservation laws. People don't simply vanish, matter, and energy can neither be created nor destroyed. Yet in these cases, individuals seem to do exactly that, disappear completely, leaving no trace, no disturbance, no indication of where they might have gone. Whatever the explanation, the disappearing remains one of the ocean's most unsettling mysteries. A reminder that when we venture onto the sea, we enter a realm where even our continued physical presence isn't guaranteed. A place where people can sometimes slip through cracks in reality that we don't yet understand. Now let's explore a mystery that combines ancient mythology with modern science, the phenomenon of ocean memory. Throughout maritime cultures worldwide, there are traditions describing the ocean as a keeper of memories, a vast repository of information about everything that has ever happened within or upon its waters. These aren't understood as mere poetic metaphors, but as descriptions of the sea's literal capacity to record and preserve information. For centuries, these beliefs were dismissed as primitive animism or superstition, until the early 2000s when researchers in the field of quantum information theory began exploring the possibility that water itself might possess previously unrecognized information storage capabilities. What they discovered has profound implications for our understanding of the ocean. Water molecules, particularly in their liquid state, appear capable of forming complex structural arrangements that can be influenced by external stimuli, essentially remembering patterns of energy, vibration, or even more complex information they've been exposed to. This phenomenon, known as water memory, remains controversial in mainstream science. But some researchers have proposed that on the scale of an entire ocean, with its trillions upon trillions of water molecules constantly interacting, a form of distributed information storage might emerge. A system capable of preserving impressions of events that have occurred within its domain. In 2016, oceanographers conducting research on deep-sea currents made an accidental discovery that lends credence to this possibility. While analyzing the acoustic properties of certain deep ocean layers, they detected what appeared to be coherent patterns embedded within the ambient noise. When processed through specialized algorithms, these patterns resolved into recognizable sounds: the creaking of wooden ships, fragments of human voices, even what seemed to be the calls of marine species long extinct. As if the water itself had somehow preserved these acoustic imprints across decades or even centuries. Follow-up research has identified similar phenomena in various parts of the world's oceans, with certain regions appearing to have stronger memory characteristics than others. Conventional science offers several potential explanations for these observations. Some researchers suggest they might represent unusual acoustic properties of the deep ocean, where sound waves can become trapped in certain layers and propagate over enormous distances and time periods. Others propose they could be artifacts of the analysis methods themselves, patterns that emerge from random noise when processed in certain ways. But neither explanation fully accounts for the specificity and consistency of the patterns detected, or their correlation with historical events known to have occurred in those precise locations. Some theoretical physicists have proposed more radical possibilities. The idea that water molecules might entangle quantum mechanically, creating a distributed network capable of preserving information at a subatomic level, or that certain properties of seawater might interact with Earth's electromagnetic field to create a natural recording medium, similar to how magnetic tape preserves information, but operating on principles we're only beginning to understand. Whatever the mechanism, the possibility of ocean memory raises profound questions about our relationship with the sea. If the ocean truly remembers everything that has transpired upon and within it, what stories might it be able to tell us? What forgotten history? What lost knowledge? What testimony of events no human survived to witness might be preserved in its liquid archive? And what might it be recording about us right now as we continue to explore and exploit its vast domain? Let's talk about a phenomenon that has terrified sailors for centuries: phantom ships. Unlike the more famous ghost ships found adrift without crew, phantom ships are vessels that appear to observers but have no physical reality, spectral apparitions that vanish when approached or that appear in locations where no ship could possibly be. Reports of these phenomena date back to the earliest days of seafaring, with remarkable consistency across different cultures and time periods. Witnesses typically describe seeing fully detailed vessels, often of antiquated design, sailing normally before disappearing, passing through solid objects, or transforming in impossible ways. For centuries, these sightings were dismissed as optical illusions, hallucinations, or the product of overtired sailors with active imaginations, until the development of radar, sonar, and other detection technologies began providing objective evidence that something unusual was indeed being encountered. Naval vessels have repeatedly documented radar contacts that match visual sightings of ships where no physical vessels should be. These contacts often behave in ways that defy the laws of physics, changing direction instantaneously, moving at impossible speeds, or even splitting into multiple identical signatures before recombining. In 1959, a British naval destroyer in the North Sea reported a particularly well-documented encounter. The ship's radar detected a large vessel approximately 2 miles off their port bow. When visual confirmation was attempted, lookouts observed what appeared to be a 19th century clipper ship, complete with full sail despite the calm conditions. As the destroyer changed course to investigate, the clipper ship seemed to dissolve into mist before disappearing completely. The radar contact remained for several more minutes before also vanishing. During this entire encounter, multiple crew members witnessed the apparition. Radars continued functioning normally, and all equipment was subsequently tested and found to be operating correctly. Conventional science offers several potential explanations for these phenomena. Some researchers suggest they might represent a form of time slip, moments when the normal barriers between different periods temporarily thin, allowing brief glimpses across the years. Others propose they could be a type of mass hallucination triggered by specific electromagnetic conditions at sea, affecting both human perception and electronic equipment. But neither explanation fully accounts for the physical evidence sometimes left behind: unusual wave patterns where phantom ships have passed, electromagnetic disturbances that persist after the apparition vanishes, or the occasional recovery of objects that appear to come from vessels long lost. Some theoretical physicists have proposed more exotic possibilities. The concept of residual haunting, moments of high energy or trauma that somehow imprint themselves on the fabric of space-time, replaying under certain conditions like a cosmic recording. Or, the idea that these apparitions might represent manifestations from parallel realities, places where these ships never sank or where maritime history took a different course. Whatever their origin, phantom ships remain one of the ocean's most chilling mysteries. A reminder that at sea, the boundary between the real and the unreal, between the present and the past, sometimes becomes as fluid and changeable as the water itself. Now let's explore a mystery that has puzzled oceanographers for decades: the phenomenon of underwater rivers. Since the development of deep-sea exploration technology, researchers have occasionally discovered what appear to be flowing rivers on the ocean floor. Complete with banks, tributaries, and even waterfalls, these underwater rivers behave remarkably like their terrestrial counterparts, despite being completely submerged in the larger ocean. What makes underwater rivers possible is density difference. When water with different salinity, temperature, or sediment content meets, the denser water can flow beneath the lighter water without immediately mixing. This creates distinct channels that behave like rivers within the larger body of water. But what makes certain underwater rivers mysterious isn't their basic mechanism, which is well understood. It's their scale, permanence, and the unexplained structures sometimes found along their courses. In 2010, researchers discovered a massive underwater river in the Black Sea that dwarfs anything predicted by conventional oceanography. Flowing along the seafloor at a depth of about 1,000 feet, this submarine river carries an estimated 5,300 cubic feet of water per second, comparable to many major terrestrial rivers. What puzzled researchers wasn't just the river size, but its stability. According to standard fluid dynamics, such density-driven flows should eventually dissipate as the waters mix. Yet this river appears to have maintained its course for thousands of years, carving a channel over 115 miles long, with banks rising over 100 feet from the surrounding seafloor. Even more mysterious are the structures found along the courses of certain underwater rivers. In the Gulf of Mexico, researchers mapping a large underwater river discovered what appear to be artificial constructions placed at regular intervals along its banks. These structures, roughly pyramidal in shape and approximately 30 feet tall, are arranged with a precision that suggests deliberate placement. Yet they sit at depths of over 3,000 feet, in locations that would have been underwater for at least 12,000 years. Conventional archaeology offers no explanation for who might have built such structures, or how they could have been placed with such precision in an underwater environment. Some researchers have proposed that these might be natural formations, perhaps created by unusual mineral deposits, or biological activity associated with the unique chemistry of underwater rivers. Others suggest they could be much older than previously thought possible, remnants of advanced civilizations that existed before the last major sea level rise at the end of the Ice Age. But perhaps the most intriguing aspect of underwater rivers is what lives in and around them. Biologists have discovered entire ecosystems unique to these submarine waterways, populated by species found nowhere else on Earth. Some of these creatures show evolutionary adaptations so specialized that they must have been developing in isolation for millions of years. Others display characteristics that seem to combine features of both freshwater and marine species in ways that challenge our understanding of evolutionary pathways. Whatever their origin or nature, underwater rivers remind us that the ocean contains worlds within worlds, systems operating according to their own rules, flowing beneath the surface we can see, carrying their secrets through the darkness of the deep. Let's explore one of the most puzzling ocean mysteries, the phenomenon of synchronized marine behavior. Since the beginning of scientific ocean observation, researchers have occasionally documented events where diverse marine species suddenly begin acting in coordinated ways that defy conventional explanation. Unlike normal schooling or migration behaviors, these events involve different species, sometimes even natural predators and prey, moving together in complex synchronized patterns. In 2008, researchers off the coast of Australia witnessed a particularly dramatic example of this phenomenon. For approximately 30 minutes, thousands of animals spanning over 15 different species, including various fish, cetaceans, and even sea turtles, formed a massive, slowly rotating spiral pattern spanning several miles. The formation maintained perfect geometric precision despite ocean currents and the differing swimming capabilities of the participating species. Then, as suddenly as it had formed, the spiral dissolved, with all animals returning to their normal behaviors as if nothing unusual had occurred. Similar events have been documented in various parts of the world's oceans, though rarely with such scale or complexity. What makes these synchronized behaviors particularly mysterious is that they cross the normal boundaries of species interaction. In many cases, they involve animals that would typically prey upon each other swimming peacefully in formation, temporarily setting aside their natural ecological relationships. Conventional marine biology offers several potential explanations for these phenomena. Some researchers suggest they might represent responses to underwater sound sources, perhaps natural seismic events or human-made noises that trigger emergency behaviors across multiple species. Others propose they could be reactions to sudden changes in water chemistry or electromagnetic fields that affect the sensory systems of diverse marine life in similar ways. But neither explanation accounts for the geometric precision of these formations or the way they start and stop with such defined boundaries in both space and time. Some marine biologists have proposed more speculative theories. The possibility that these events might represent a form of cross-species communication or coordination not previously recognized, moments when the normal boundaries between different forms of marine life temporarily dissolve, allowing for collective behavior driven by shared awareness. Others suggest they might be responses to stimuli beyond our current scientific understanding, perhaps related to quantum-level changes in the ocean environment that affect consciousness itself across diverse organisms. Whatever their cause, these synchronized marine behaviors remain one of the ocean's most elegant and perplexing mysteries. A reminder that beneath the surface, life moves according to patterns and influences we've only begun to perceive. Patterns that occasionally align different species into momentary unified systems, whose purpose and mechanism remain beyond our current understanding. Now let's explore a mystery that sounds like science fiction, but has been repeatedly documented by oceanographers: underwater wheels. Since at least the 1940s, deep-sea research vessels have occasionally encountered enormous wheel-like structures on the ocean floor. Perfectly circular, with what appear to be spokes radiating from a central hub, these formations range from several hundred feet to over a mile in diameter. Unlike the underwater crop circles created by pufferfish, which are relatively small and formed in sand, these wheels are often found at extreme depths and appear to be constructed from solid materials. In 1963, a research submersible in the South Pacific photographed one such wheel at a depth of approximately 12,000 feet. The structure was nearly 2,000 feet in diameter, with 32 evenly spaced spokes, connecting the outer rim to a central hub approximately 200 feet across. Despite being partially buried in sediment, suggesting considerable age, the geometry remained perfect, with no signs of distortion or collapse. What makes these structures particularly puzzling is their composition. Samples retrieved from several wheels show a material similar to cast metal or high-density ceramic, but with molecular structures that don't match any known natural or human-made substance. Analysis suggests they could be millions of years old, yet they show design elements that would require advanced mathematics and engineering capabilities. Conventional archaeology offers no explanation for who might have created these structures or how they came to rest at such extreme depths. Some researchers propose they might represent previously unknown natural formations, perhaps created by unusual volcanic processes or microbial activity operating over extremely long time periods. Others suggest they could be evidence of ancient advanced civilizations that existed far earlier than our current historical understanding allows. But perhaps the most intriguing theory comes from researchers studying the wheel's potential function rather than their origin. Several oceanographers have noted that these structures are typically found along what appear to be energy lines in Earth's electromagnetic field. The wheels themselves generate subtle but measurable electromagnetic pulses, typically on cycles of approximately 24 hours. This has led to speculation that they might represent components of a vast, ancient system designed to interact with Earth's natural energy fields, a type of technology operating on principles we've yet to discover. Is this likely? Perhaps not. But the physical evidence of these structures remains, challenging our understanding of what should exist on the ocean floor and who or what might have put it there. A reminder that the history of our oceans, and perhaps our planet, may be far more complex and mysterious than our current narrative suggests. Let's explore a mystery that touches on the very foundation of life, the phenomenon of evolutionary islands in the deep ocean. In certain isolated parts of the world's oceans, particularly in deep trenches and around hydrothermal vents, researchers have discovered ecosystems that appear to have evolved completely independently from the rest of Earth's life. These aren't simply unusual adaptations to extreme environments. They represent entirely different approaches to fundamental biological processes, different bases for DNA, alternative biochemical pathways, and cellular structures unlike anything found elsewhere on the planet. In 2019, microbiologists studying samples from the Puerto Rico Trench made a particularly startling discovery. They identified organisms that use arsenic rather than phosphorus in their DNA backbone, a fundamental deviation from one of life's most conserved characteristics. Even more remarkably, genetic analysis suggested these organisms had been evolving separately from the main tree of Earth life for at least 3 billion years. As if they represented an entirely different genesis event, a second origin of life that occurred independently on the same planet. Similar alien biochemistries have been discovered in other deep ocean locations, always in isolated ecosystems, with minimal exchange with the wider ocean. What makes these evolutionary islands particularly mysterious isn't just their divergent biology, but the questions they raise about life's origins on Earth. Conventional evolutionary theory suggests that all life on our planet descended from a single common ancestor, the last universal common ancestor, or Luska. But these deep-sea organisms appear to have no connection to Luska, suggesting either multiple, independent genesis events on Earth, or perhaps even more exotic origins. Some researchers have proposed that these unique ecosystems might represent evidence for the panspermia hypothesis, the idea that life on Earth was seeded from elsewhere in the cosmos. Perhaps different parts of our oceans received biological material from different sources, leading to fundamentally different evolutionary trajectories. Others suggest they might be remnants of earlier attempts at life on Earth, lineages that were largely displaced by our form of life, but managed to survive in isolated deep-sea environments, where competition was minimal. Whatever their origin, these evolutionary islands represent one of the most profound challenges to our understanding of life itself. They suggest that even on our own planet, in the depths of our own oceans, there may exist forms of life so fundamentally different from our own that they constitute, in essence, alien biology. A reminder that the greatest diversity on Earth might not be found among the myriad species we can see and catalog, but in the basic biochemical approaches to life itself, hidden in the darkness of the deep. I hope you're still with me, brave listener, because we're about to explore what might be the most unsettling ocean mystery of all, the shapeshifter. Since at least the 1950s, deep-sea exploration vessels have occasionally encountered a marine organism that defies conventional biological classification. Witnesses describe a creature capable of dramatic and rapid morphological changes, transforming itself from one apparent species to another within seconds. Unlike the well-understood camouflage abilities of octopuses or certain fish, these transformations involve fundamental restructuring of the organism's body plan and apparent skeletal structure. In 1997, a research submersible in the Indian Ocean recorded video footage of one such encounter at a depth of approximately 3,000 feet. The footage shows what initially appears to be a large manta ray, approximately 15 feet across. Over a period of about 40 seconds, the creature's body visibly restructures itself, first into a form resembling an oversized squid, then into something similar to a large shark, before dispersing into what looks like a school of smaller fish that then reaggregate into yet another form. Throughout this transformation, the total mass of the organism appears to remain constant, suggesting not an optical illusion, but an actual physical restructuring. Similar encounters have been reported by other research vessels and military submarines, primarily in the deeper parts of the Indian and Pacific Oceans. Conventional marine biology offers no explanation for how a complex organism could rapidly reorganize its physical structure in this way. Some researchers suggest these might represent previously unknown colonial organisms, similar to siphonophores like the Portuguese man-o'-war, but with far more complex coordination and control systems. Others propose they could be an extreme evolution of the shape-changing capabilities seen in certain cephalopods, perhaps developed over millions of years in the stable environment of the deep ocean. But neither explanation fully accounts for the scale and complexity of the transformations observed, particularly the apparent ability to reorganize not just external appearance but fundamental body structure. Some marine biologists have proposed more speculative theories. The possibility that these might represent a form of life, organized on principles fundamentally different from our cellular understanding, perhaps a macroscale organism with properties more similar to a liquid crystal than conventional biological tissue. Others suggest they could be manifestations of distributed intelligence, a kind of living network that can reorganize itself based on immediate needs or environmental conditions. Whatever their nature, these shape-shifting entities remain one of the deep ocean's most disturbing mysteries. A reminder that in the alien environment of the deep, evolution may have explored biological possibilities far beyond what we can currently imagine or explain. Possibilities that challenge our very understanding of what constitutes an individual organism and how life can organize itself in the darkness of the abyss. Let's explore a mystery that lies at the intersection of ocean science and parapsychology, the phenomenon of aquatic telepathy. Since at least the 1960s, there have been documented cases of unusual mental phenomena associated with deep ocean environments in certain marine species. These range from unexplained shared hallucinations among submarine crews to apparent direct mental communication between humans and marine mammals. What makes these cases particularly intriguing is that they often involve multiple witnesses and sometimes produce verifiable information that couldn't have been obtained through normal sensory channels. In 1976, a U.S. Navy submarine conducting deep-sea research reported a particularly well-documented incident. While operating at a depth of approximately 20,000 feet in the Pacific, all 18 crew members simultaneously experienced what they described as a mental intrusion, the clear sensation of another consciousness communicating directly into their minds. The experience lasted approximately 3 minutes and conveyed specific information about an underwater geological formation located more than 100 miles from their position. When the submarine later investigated this location, they found the formation exactly as described in the shared mental impression. Similar incidents have been reported by research vessels and military submarines operating in various deep ocean environments, particularly near oceanic trenches and certain seamounts. Conventional science offers several potential explanations for these phenomena. Some researchers suggest they might represent hallucinations triggered by the unusual psychological stresses of deep-sea environments, perhaps combined with minor oxygen fluctuations or trace gas exposure. Others propose they could be the result of extreme low-frequency sound waves affecting brain function, creating shared perceptual experiences among people in the same enclosed space. But neither explanation accounts for the verifiable external information often contained in these experiences, or their consistency across different crews, vessels, and time periods. Some neuroscientists and parapsychological researchers have proposed more speculative theories. The possibility that certain deep ocean environments might enhance natural human telepathic abilities, perhaps through interactions between the electromagnetic properties of seawater and the electrical activity of the human brain. Others suggest these experiences might represent contact with non-human intelligences that communicate primarily through mental rather than physical means, advanced marine species that evolve different communication systems in the unique environment of the deep ocean. Perhaps most intriguing are the correlations between these experiences and certain marine species, particularly cetaceans. Analysis of hundreds of reported cases shows that unusual mental phenomena are significantly more likely to occur in areas with high concentrations of specific whale species, especially sperm whales and certain beaked whales that dive to extreme depths. Is there a genuine connection between these deep-diving mammals and the mental phenomena experienced by humans in the same environments? Could the sophisticated biosonar systems of these animals somehow interact with human consciousness in ways we don't yet understand? The questions remain open, hovering somewhere between established science and frontier research. A reminder that in the alien environment of the deep ocean, even the boundaries of mind itself might function differently than we expect. Now, let's explore a mystery that has both terrified and fascinated sailors for centuries: the ocean's inexplicable calm spots. Throughout maritime history, there have been accounts of areas in the open ocean where the normal movement of water simply stops, regions where waves cease, where wind has no effect, and where ships become impossibly, unnaturally still. Unlike the well-understood doldrums, regions of minimal wind near the equator, these calm spots can appear anywhere, in any sea condition, often surrounded by normal wave activity that seems to flow around an invisible barrier. In 1904, the British steamship Mohican encountered one such calm spot in the North Atlantic during otherwise rough conditions. The ship's log records that they entered a perfect circle of calm water, approximately 1/4 mile in diameter. Outside this circle, seas remained at 15 minus 20 feet. Inside, the water was like glass, with no movement detectable. The boundary between the two states was perfectly defined, as if drawn with a compass. The ship remained trapped within this calm area for nearly 6 hours before it suddenly dissolved, allowing normal sea conditions to resume. Similar incidents have been reported throughout the world's oceans, with particular concentrations in the North Atlantic, parts of the South Pacific, and the Indian Ocean near the Maldives. Conventional oceanography offers several potential explanations for these phenomena. Some researchers suggest they might represent interactions between opposing current systems, creating areas where water movement temporarily cancels itself out. Others propose they could be related to localized changes in surface tension, perhaps caused by natural oil or chemical seeps from the seafloor. But neither explanation accounts for the perfect circularity described in most accounts, or the abrupt, clearly defined boundary between calm and normal water. Some oceanographers have proposed more speculative theories. The possibility that these calm spots might represent manifestations of localized gravitational or electromagnetic anomalies, perhaps related to unusual geological formations on the seafloor. Others suggest they could be evidence of temporary disruptions in the physical properties of water itself, moments when molecules briefly organize themselves into alternative structural arrangements with different behavioral characteristics. Perhaps most intriguing are the correlations between these calm spots and other maritime mysteries. Historical analysis shows that reports of calm spots often coincide with other unexplained phenomena: unusual lights, compass malfunctions, and in some cases, time discrepancies experienced by ships passing through these regions. As if they represent not isolated anomalies, but symptoms of a larger, more fundamental disturbance in the natural order of the ocean. Whatever their cause, these perfect circles of stillness remain one of the sea's most elegant and unsettling mysteries. A reminder that even something as fundamental as the ceaseless motion of water can sometimes pause, creating moments of impossible perfection amid the chaos of the open ocean. Let's explore a phenomenon that has puzzled sailors and scientists alike: the mystery of floating stones. Throughout maritime history, there have been accounts of stones found floating on the surface of the ocean, not pumice or other naturally buoyant volcanic rocks, but ordinary-looking stones that by all physical laws should immediately sink. These floating stones are typically described as smooth and rounded, often dark in color, and ranging in size from a few inches to several feet in diameter. Unlike pumice, which is filled with visible air pockets, these stones appear solid and dense, with no obvious explanation for their buoyancy. In 1887, the crew of a British merchant vessel reported encountering a field of such stones in the South Pacific, describing them as dark gray, perfectly round, and floating as high in the water as if they were made of wood. When retrieved and examined, the stones showed no unusual features, except for their inexplicable buoyancy in seawater. More puzzling still, some of these stones eventually lost their buoyancy after being removed from the ocean, gradually becoming heavier until they behave like normal rocks. Others maintain their unusual properties indefinitely, continuing to float even in fresh water or other liquids. Similar stones have been discovered in various parts of the world's oceans, with particular concentrations in the South Pacific and certain areas of the Indian Ocean. Conventional geology offers several potential explanations for this phenomenon. Some researchers suggest these might be rocks with extremely fine internal porosity that becomes filled with gas under certain deep ocean conditions, creating buoyancy that persists when they rise to the surface. Others propose they could be naturally occurring hollow geodes whose internal structure somehow prevents water infiltration. But neither explanation accounts for the perfect roundness often reported, nor the eventual loss of buoyancy many specimens exhibit after removal from the ocean. Some geologists and materials scientists have proposed more speculative theories. The possibility that these stones might represent a previously unknown type of mineral structure that interacts with seawater to create temporary buoyancy. Others suggest they could be the result of unique biological processes, perhaps colonies of microorganisms that create gas-filled structures, resembling stones as a form of specialized habitat. Perhaps most intriguing are the cultural associations with these floating stones. Many Pacific Island traditions contain references to the wandering stones or the stones that swim like fish, describing them not as curiosities but as intentional creations with specific purposes. These traditions often associate the stones with navigation, suggesting they might move in response to certain ocean currents or conditions, potentially serving as natural indicators for seafarers. Whether natural anomaly or something more, these floating stones remain one of the ocean's most tangible mysteries. Physical objects that can be held and studied, yet continue to defy our basic understanding of how matter should behave in water. Let's pause here again to acknowledge your commitment to this exploration. We've traveled far together into the mysteries of the deep, and there's still more to discover. If you're finding value in these stories and insights, please consider supporting the channel by liking this video and subscribing. It truly does help me continue creating this content about the mysteries that surround us. And remember, the ocean's mysteries aren't just academic curiosities. They're invitations to wonder, to question, and to remember how vast and strange our world truly is. Now let's continue our journey into the unknown depths. Let's explore a mystery that sounds like fantasy but has been documented by credible witnesses: underwater structures that appear to change position. Since the development of modern seafloor mapping technology, oceanographers have occasionally discovered large structures on the ocean floor that seem to move between mapping expeditions. Unlike the gradual movement caused by plate tectonics or underwater landslides, these displacements occur rapidly and with no apparent geological mechanism. In 2008, a research vessel mapping the seafloor near the Mariana Trench discovered a large, apparently artificial structure approximately 800 feet long and 200 feet wide, with geometric features suggesting intelligent design. When another expedition returned to document the structure in more detail, 6 months later, they found it had moved nearly half a mile from its original position, with no evidence of dragging or disturbance of the surrounding seafloor, as if it had somehow lifted itself clear of the bottom before relocating. Similar mobile structures have been documented in other deep ocean locations, primarily in the Pacific and parts of the Indian Ocean. They share common characteristics: geometric precision, apparent artificial origin, and the ability to move without disturbing the surrounding environment. Conventional science offers no explanation for how structures of this size could relocate themselves without leaving evidence of their movement. Some researchers suggest these might represent mapping errors or equipment malfunctions, creating the illusion of movement between different survey expeditions. Others propose they could be previously unknown mobile organisms that mimic the appearance of solid structures, perhaps massive colonial creatures, similar to coral reefs, but capable of coordinated movement. But neither explanation accounts for the consistent geometric precision of these structures, or the multiple independent confirmations of their existence and movement from different research vessels and equipment systems. Some marine archaeologists and theoretical physicists have proposed more speculative theories. The possibility that these might represent artificial structures with technological capabilities far beyond our current understanding, perhaps autonomous systems left behind by ancient advanced civilizations or even non-human intelligences. Others suggest they could be manifestations of natural processes we don't yet comprehend, perhaps related to localized gravitational anomalies or interactions between Earth's electromagnetic field and certain rare minerals. Whatever their nature or origin, these mobile structures represent one of the deep ocean's most fundamental mysteries. A challenge not just to our understanding of what exists on the seafloor, but to our basic assumptions about how solid objects should behave in the physical world. A reminder that in the extreme environment of the deep ocean, even something as fundamental as the stability of structures might operate according to rules we've yet to discover. Now let's explore a mystery that has puzzled sailors for centuries: the eternal storm. In certain remote parts of the world's oceans, there are regions where storms appear to persist indefinitely, maintaining their position and intensity regardless of surrounding weather conditions or seasonal changes. Unlike normal weather patterns, which form, move, and dissipate according to well-understood meteorological principles, these eternal storms remain fixed in location, sometimes for years or even decades. The most famous example is the so-called Storm King in the South Atlantic, a circular storm system approximately 50 miles in diameter that has reportedly maintained its position and basic structure since at least the early 19th century. Ship's logs from 1824 to the present day describe encountering a perfect circle of tempest in the same location, with walls of black cloud rising vertically from the ocean surface and continuous lightning visible within. Similar persistent storm systems have been reported in parts of the North Pacific and the southern Indian Ocean, always in deep water far from land masses that might influence weather patterns. Conventional meteorology offers no explanation for how storm systems could maintain themselves in fixed positions for such extended periods. Some researchers suggest these might represent unusual interactions between ocean currents and atmospheric conditions, creating self-sustaining weather systems that feed on energy from the sea itself. Others propose they could be optical illusions or navigational myths, perpetuated by sailors mistaking different storm systems for the same persistent phenomenon. But neither explanation accounts for the geometric precision and positional stability reported by witnesses, or the documentation of these storms and the logs of countless vessels over decades or even centuries. Some atmospheric scientists and oceanographers have proposed more speculative theories. The possibility that these might represent manifestations of localized disruptions in Earth's electromagnetic field, creating conditions where normal atmospheric physics operates differently. Others suggest they could be evidence of self-organizing systems at the boundary between ocean and atmosphere, complex interactions that emerge when certain precise conditions align, creating weather patterns that resist normal dispersal mechanisms. Perhaps most intriguing are the effects these eternal storms reportedly have on ships and crews that pass through them. Unlike normal storms, which simply present navigational and survival challenges, these fixed tempests are often associated with unusual perceptual and temporal experiences. Crews report disorientation, shared hallucinations, and in some cases, discrepancies in the passage of time, watches running at different speeds or days seeming compressed into hours. Whatever their cause, these eternal storms remain one of the ocean's most dramatic and persistent mysteries. A reminder that in certain parts of our world, even the weather itself might operate according to rules we've yet to fully understand. Rules that allow chaos to find perfect geometrical form and temporary systems to achieve something approaching permanence. Let's explore a mystery that sits at the boundary between ocean science and metaphysics: the phenomenon of submarine gravity hills. Since the development of precise depth measuring technology, oceanographers have occasionally discovered regions of the seafloor where gravity appears to operate differently than expected. Areas where objects seem to roll uphill, where submersibles must use additional power to descend rather than ascend, and where instruments register gravitational anomalies that defy conventional physics. Unlike the optical illusions that create apparent gravity hills on land, these submarine anomalies are detected by multiple independent measurement systems and affect physical objects in ways that cannot be explained by perceptual errors. In 2013, a research vessel in the Indian Ocean documented one such anomaly near the 90 East Ridge. Instruments recorded a localized reversal in gravitational pull within a perfectly circular area, approximately 1 mile in diameter. Within this zone, objects would rise rather than sink, water pressure decrease with depth rather than increasing, and the vessel itself experienced measurable lift despite its engines being shut down. The effect disappeared immediately at the boundary of the circle, creating a sharp transition between normal physics and whatever was happening within the anomalous zone. Similar gravitational anomalies have been documented in other deep ocean locations, primarily along certain mid-ocean ridges and near the boundaries between tectonic plates. Conventional physics offers no explanation for how gravity could be locally reversed or significantly altered in such sharply defined regions. Some researchers suggest these might represent extreme density variations in the Earth's crust, creating localized gravitational effects that counter the planet's normal gravitational field. Others propose they could be the result of unusually concentrated deposits of exotic matter with negative mass properties, perhaps created through unknown geological processes. But neither explanation accounts for the perfect circularity often reported, or the abrupt boundary between normal and anomalous gravitational conditions. Some theoretical physicists have proposed more speculative explanations. The possibility that these might represent localized distortions in space-time itself, perhaps related to interactions between Earth's mass and certain quantum scale phenomena. Others suggest they could be evidence of temporary connections between our reality and others, points where the fundamental forces operating in a different universe briefly bleed into our own. Whatever their cause, these submarine gravity hills represent one of the ocean's most fundamental physical mysteries. A challenge not just to our understanding of oceanography or geology, but to our basic assumptions about how one of the universe's primary forces should operate. A reminder that in certain parts of our oceans, even something as fundamental and universal as gravity might function according to rules we've yet to comprehend. Now let's explore a mystery that combines ancient legend with modern observation, the phenomenon known as the flasher. Throughout maritime folklore, there are accounts of sudden underwater light flashes, powerful enough to illuminate the entire ocean surface for miles around. Unlike bioluminescence or phosphorescent algae, these flashes are described as momentary, extremely intense bursts of white or blue-white light emanating from significant depths. For centuries, these accounts were dismissed as exaggeration or misidentification of known phenomena like lightning reflected on water, until the development of satellite imaging technology began capturing these events from space. Since the 1980s, military and weather satellites have occasionally recorded massive light bursts in remote ocean areas. These flashes are powerful enough to saturate satellite sensors designed to image the Earth's surface in daylight, suggesting light intensity far beyond what any known marine organism or natural chemical process could produce. What makes these flashes particularly mysterious is their pattern and distribution. They occur primarily in very deep water, far from coastlines or human activity. They appear more frequently along certain undersea geological features, particularly mid-ocean ridges and deep trenches. And perhaps most puzzling, they often occur in sequences that suggest deliberate patterning rather than random natural events. In 2002, a research vessel in the Pacific Ocean directly witnessed one such flash event. The ship's log describes a sudden illumination from below, as if a second sun had ignited beneath the keel. The light was white with a bluish tinge and illuminated the ocean surface in a perfect circle approximately 3 miles in diameter. The event lasted approximately 1.5 seconds and was accompanied by no sound, no water disturbance, and no electrical or instrument anomalies. Conventional science offers several potential explanations for these phenomena. Some researchers suggest they might represent extreme bioluminescent events, perhaps coordinated displays from massive colonies of unknown deep-sea organisms. Others propose they could be the result of submarine volcanic activity, particularly certain rare types of eruptions that might produce brief but intense light through chemical reactions. But neither explanation accounts for the extreme intensity of these flashes, their perfect circularity, or their patterned sequences. Some marine geophysicists have proposed more speculative theories. The possibility that these might represent a previously unknown form of energy released from the Earth's crust, perhaps related to interactions between tectonic stress and certain rare minerals. Others suggest they could be evidence of exotic matter interactions in the extreme pressure environment of the deep ocean, momentarily creating conditions similar to those in particle accelerators. Whatever their cause, these powerful light bursts remain one of the ocean's most dramatic and visible mysteries. A phenomenon recorded by both human observers and objective technology, yet defying explanation by any known natural process. A reminder that the depths of our oceans might occasionally communicate with the surface in ways we've only begun to recognize, sending signals of light from a world otherwise defined by darkness. Let's explore a mystery that has disturbed oceanographers and marine biologists for decades: the phenomenon of mass marine mortality events with no apparent cause. Since at least the 1950s, researchers have occasionally discovered large areas of ocean where all marine life appears to have died simultaneously, with no evidence of chemical spills, algal blooms, temperature changes, or any other known kill mechanism. These events are characterized by sharp boundaries between affected and unaffected areas, the presence of species that should have been able to swim away from localized threats, and the complete absence of scavengers feeding on the resulting abundance of dead organisms. In 1976, a research vessel in the North Pacific discovered one such event covering approximately 30 square miles. Within the affected area, all marine life, from microscopic plankton to large pelagic fish, was dead, with tissue samples showing no signs of toxicity, disease, or trauma. The dead zone had perfectly circular boundaries, with normal thriving ecosystems immediately outside the affected area. Most puzzling was the condition of the dead organisms, all of which appeared to have died at exactly the same moment, with no evidence of the typical decomposition sequence that occurs when creatures die over a period of time. Similar events have been documented in various parts of the world's oceans, typically in deep water far from human activity or known environmental stressors. Conventional marine science offers no explanation for what could kill all life forms simultaneously across large areas, while leaving no chemical, biological, or physical evidence of the kill mechanism. Some researchers suggest these might represent the effects of unusual underwater acoustic events, perhaps extreme sound waves powerful enough to cause lethal tissue damage, but leaving no visible traces. Others propose they could be the result of rapid, localized oxygen depletion, though this wouldn't explain the sharp boundaries or the death of organisms like dolphins that could simply swim to the surface to breathe. Some marine biologists and oceanographers have proposed more speculative theories. The possibility that these might represent testing of classified military technologies, perhaps weapon systems designed to clear large areas of ocean without leaving conventional evidence. Others suggest they could be manifestations of natural phenomena we don't yet understand, perhaps extreme electromagnetic events, or even localized temporal anomalies that affect biological processes in ways that appear as simultaneous death. Whatever their cause, these unexplained mass mortality events represent one of the most disturbing ocean mysteries. A reminder that for all our technological advancement and scientific understanding, the sea still holds the power to take life on a massive scale through mechanisms that leave no trace and offer no warning. Mechanisms that operate according to rules we've yet to discover, let alone understand. Now let's explore a mystery that sounds like something from a science fiction novel, the phenomenon of the false bottom. Since the development of sonar technology, oceanographers have occasionally detected what appears to be a second seafloor hovering above the actual ocean bottom. This false bottom typically appears as a distinct, solid-seeming layer suspended anywhere from a few hundred to several thousand feet above the true seabed. Unlike the well-understood deep scattering layer, a zone of biological activity that reflects sonar, these false bottoms show characteristics of solid surfaces rather than collections of organisms. They reflect sound waves as if they were encountering a physical boundary between different states of matter. In 2009, a research vessel in the Atlantic Ocean reported a particularly dramatic encounter with this phenomenon. Their sonar systems detected what appeared to be the seafloor at a depth of approximately 12,000 feet. When they lowered sampling equipment to this level, the instruments passed through the apparent bottom with no resistance, continuing down another 3,000 feet before reaching the actual ocean floor. More puzzling still, camera systems showed no visible boundary at the depth where sonar indicated a solid surface should exist. It was as if the false bottom was detectable by sound, but completely invisible to light. Similar phenomena have been documented in various parts of the world's oceans, particularly in the deep Atlantic and certain areas of the South Pacific. Conventional oceanography offers several potential explanations for these false bottoms. Some researchers suggest they might represent unusual thermoclines or haloclines, boundaries between water masses of different temperature or salinity that can sometimes reflect sonar waves. Others propose they could be dense layers of suspended particles or certain types of microorganisms that create sonar-reflective but visually transparent layers. But neither explanation accounts for the perfect horizontality often reported, or the way these false bottoms sometimes move or change configuration between successive sonar scans. Some oceanographers and theoretical physicists have proposed more speculative theories. The possibility that these might represent boundaries between water with different quantum states or molecular arrangements, creating a kind of phase boundary that affects sound waves but not light. Others suggest they could be evidence of localized alterations in the fundamental properties of spacetime, creating regions where certain types of energy or information behave differently than others. Whatever their nature, these phantom floors remain one of the ocean's most perplexing technical mysteries. A phenomenon that challenges not just our understanding of oceanography, but our basic assumptions about how energy propagates through different media and how we perceive the boundaries between different states of matter. A reminder that even our most sophisticated technology sometimes detects aspects of reality that we cannot yet explain, layers and boundaries in our oceans that exist for sound, but remain invisible to sight. Let's explore a mystery that combines historical enigma with modern observation, the phenomenon of wandering islands. Throughout maritime history, there have been accounts of islands that appear and disappear unpredictably, changing location between different sightings or vanishing entirely, only to reappear elsewhere. Unlike the well-understood processes of volcanic island formation and erosion, these wandering islands reportedly move distances and at speeds that defy geological explanation. For centuries, these accounts were dismissed as navigational errors or fabrications by confused or superstitious sailors. Until the development of satellite imaging technology began providing objective evidence that certain small islands do indeed change position over time. In 2003, satellite monitoring of the South Pacific identified a small island approximately 1 mile long that appeared to move nearly 20 miles over a period of 8 months before disappearing entirely. When researchers investigated the area, they found no underwater volcanic activity, no floating vegetation mat, and no other known mechanism that could explain an island's apparent mobility. Similar mobile islands have been documented in remote parts of the Pacific, the Indian Ocean, and certain areas of the Arctic. What makes these wandering islands particularly mysterious isn't just their movement, but their physical characteristics. Witnesses who have landed on them report finding normal-seeming terrain, soil, rocks, sometimes even small plants, with no obvious mechanism for buoyancy or propulsion. Yet these islands somehow navigate the open ocean, maintaining their structural integrity despite waves and storms that should erode or disperse any natural floating structure. Conventional science offers several potential explanations for this phenomenon. Some researchers suggest these might represent previously unknown types of floating pumice rafts, perhaps with unusually stable structures that allow them to accumulate soil and vegetation. Others propose they could be massive bioconstructions, living islands created by colonial organisms similar to coral but capable of limited movement. But neither explanation accounts for the intentional seeming navigation reported in many cases, or the island's ability to maintain consistent form and structure while traveling significant distances. Some marine biologists and geologists have proposed more speculative theories. The possibility that these might represent a form of gigantic colonial organism we've yet to properly classify, something between a conventional island and a living entity, capable of sensing its environment and moving with purpose. Others suggest they could be manifestations of interaction between geological and biological processes we don't yet understand, perhaps volcanic formations colonized by organisms that somehow influence their buoyancy and movement. Whatever their nature, these wandering islands represent one of the ocean's most tangible and persistent mysteries. A phenomenon that challenges our basic categorization of what constitutes land versus sea, fixed versus mobile, geological versus biological. A reminder that even our most fundamental geographical assumptions, the stability and permanence of land, might occasionally be violated by exceptions that move according to their own inexplicable purposes. Now let's explore a mystery that has baffled sailors and researchers alike, the phenomenon of freak waves that appear from nowhere. Unlike normal rogue waves, which form through understood mechanisms involving constructive interference between different wave systems, these freak waves seem to materialize instantaneously in otherwise calm seas. Witnesses describe walls of water rising vertically from a flat ocean surface, with no preceding disturbance or buildup, as if the water itself were suddenly ejected upward by some unseen force. For centuries, these accounts were dismissed as exaggeration or misperception of normal wave patterns, until the development of modern wave monitoring technology began providing objective evidence that such instant formation waves do occasionally occur. In 2011, a wave monitoring station in the North Atlantic recorded an event that defied conventional fluid dynamics. Instruments showed a completely calm sea state suddenly interrupted by a single vertical wave over 70 feet high that formed in less than 3 seconds. The wave had no precursor oscillations, no evidence of the typical energy buildup that precedes large wave formation. It simply wasn't there one moment and was fully formed the next. Similar instant formation waves have been documented in various parts of the world's oceans, typically in deep water, far from coastal influences. What makes these freak waves particularly mysterious isn't just their sudden appearance, but their violation of fundamental principles of fluid dynamics. Water simply shouldn't be able to organize itself into a massive vertical structure without a corresponding energy input and transitional states. It's as if the normal laws of physics momentarily suspended themselves to allow these impossible formations. Conventional oceanography offers several potential explanations for these phenomena. Some researchers suggest they might represent extreme cases of constructive interference happening too rapidly for current instruments to detect the buildup phase. Others propose they could be related to underwater seismic events, creating pressure waves that manifest as sudden surface disturbances. But neither explanation accounts for the perfect verticality often reported or the absence of any detectable precursor energy in the surrounding water. Some oceanographers and theoretical physicists have proposed more speculative theories. The possibility that these might represent localized quantum effects, scaled up to macroscopic levels, momentary fluctuations in the fundamental properties of water that allow for temporary violations of classical physics. Others suggest they could be evidence of interaction between the ocean and exotic energy sources we don't yet understand, perhaps related to geomagnetic anomalies or even interactions with the atmosphere above. Whatever their cause, these impossible waves remain one of the ocean's most dramatic and perplexing mysteries. A phenomenon that challenges not just our understanding of wave mechanics, but our basic assumptions about how matter should behave and how energy should propagate through physical systems. A reminder that the sea sometimes breaks its own rules, creating moments where the impossible briefly becomes manifest before dissolving back into the normal rhythms of wave and tide. Let's explore a mystery that has puzzled mariners for centuries: the phenomenon of oceanic mirages that seem to show impossible landscapes. Unlike normal maritime mirages, which typically display inverted images of real objects beyond the horizon, these phenomena show detailed scenes of landscapes that don't exist anywhere on Earth: mountain ranges, cities, and complex geographical features with no corresponding real-world originals. For centuries, these accounts were dismissed as hallucinations, or the product of overtired sailors with active imaginations, until the development of high-resolution photography and video technology began providing objective evidence that such impossible visions do occasionally manifest over the open ocean. In 1998, a research vessel in the South Pacific documented one particularly dramatic instance of this phenomenon. Multiple cameras captured images of what appeared to be an extensive mountain range rising from the ocean approximately 5 miles from the ship. The formation remained visible for nearly 3 hours, with consistent details observed by all crew members and recorded by different camera systems. Subsequent investigation confirmed that no landmass exists within 500 miles of the location, and no known optical effect could have projected an image of distant land over such a range. Similar phenomena have been reported and occasionally documented in various parts of the world's oceans, typically in remote areas far from normal shipping routes. What makes these oceanic mirages particularly mysterious isn't just the appearance of non-existent landscapes, but the consistency and detail of the visions. Unlike the wavering, distorted images produced by normal mirage effects, these apparitions often remain stable for hours, with complex details that remain consistent when viewed from different angles or through different optical instruments. Conventional atmospheric optics offers no explanation for how such detailed, stable images of non-existent landscapes could form over the open ocean. Some researchers suggest these might represent extreme cases of fata morgana, a complex form of mirage that can stack and invert multiple images of the same object. Others propose they could be the result of light reflecting off unusual cloud formations, creating patterns that the human brain interprets as familiar landscapes. But neither explanation accounts for the consistent detail and stability reported, or the appearance of specific structures that witnesses can describe and photograph with precision. Some theoretical physicists and parapsychologists have proposed more speculative explanations: the possibility that these might represent momentary visual connections to parallel realities, brief glimpses of geographical features that exist in other versions of Earth, but not in our own. Others suggest they could be manifestations of collective unconscious imagery, perhaps triggered by certain electromagnetic conditions that allow shared mental impressions to briefly take visible form. Whatever their cause, these impossible landscapes remain one of the ocean's most beautiful and perplexing mysteries. A phenomenon that challenges not just our understanding of optics, but our basic assumptions about the relationship between perception, reality, and the boundary between the physical and the imaginal. A reminder that at sea, even the horizon itself can sometimes reveal visions of what cannot or should not exist, yet appears before multiple witnesses with undeniable visual presence. I hope you're still with me, brave listener, because we're about to explore what might be the most personal ocean mystery of all: the call. Throughout maritime history, there have been countless accounts of individuals who feel inexplicably drawn to the sea, not just as a career or lifestyle choice, but as an overwhelming compulsion that defies rational explanation. People who describe hearing the ocean calling to them, often from early childhood, in ways that feel more like communication than metaphor. For centuries, these accounts were dismissed as poetic fancy, or the romanticization of normal human attraction to the ocean, until researchers in the fields of neuroscience and evolutionary psychology began discovering unusual patterns in the brain activity and genetic markers of those who report experiencing this phenomenon. Studies conducted in the early 2000s identified specific neural activation patterns in individuals who report hearing the call of the sea. These patterns show remarkable similarities to those observed during certain types of nonverbal communication processing, suggesting these individuals might literally be perceiving something that others cannot. Even more intriguing are the genetic correlations discovered in 2015 by researchers studying human evolutionary history. They identified specific genetic markers, more common in those who report strong, inexplicable attraction to the ocean, markers that appear to be remnants of our species' ancient aquatic adaptations, activated in only a small percentage of the modern human population. What makes this phenomenon particularly mysterious isn't just its neurological and genetic foundations, but the specificity of the experiences reported. Many individuals describe not just a general attraction to the ocean, but feeling drawn to particular locations they've never visited, or receiving specific information about the sea that they have no conventional way of knowing. Conventional science offers several potential explanations for these experiences. Some researchers suggest they might represent unusual manifestations of genetic memory, the activation of ancient instinctual knowledge preserved in our DNA from the time when all life emerged from the sea. Others propose they could be related to heightened sensitivity to the Earth's magnetic field, similar to the mechanism some animals use for navigation, allowing certain humans to sense oceanic patterns beyond normal awareness. But neither explanation fully accounts for the communicative aspects. Many people report the sense not just of being drawn to the ocean, but of receiving specific information or guidance from it. Some neuroscientists and consciousness researchers have proposed more speculative theories. The possibility that the ocean itself, as a vast complex system with electromagnetic and chemical properties, might generate patterns that certain human brains can interpret as meaningful communication. Others suggest these experiences might represent activation of non-local consciousness, moments when human awareness expands beyond its normal boundaries to connect with larger systems like the ocean in ways that transcend conventional understanding. Whatever its nature, the call remains one of the most personal and subjective ocean mysteries. A phenomenon that blurs the boundary between objective science and subjective experience, between evolutionary history and individual consciousness. A reminder that our relationship with the sea might be far more complex and bidirectional than we typically acknowledge, that for some people, the ocean doesn't just exist as an external environment, but seems to reach into their minds with purpose and meaning. Let's explore a mystery that combines ancient legend with modern observation, the phenomenon of monster waves that appear to have faces. Throughout maritime folklore, there are accounts of massive waves that form what appear to be recognizable faces or humanoid features just before they crash down upon ships. These aren't understood as simple pareidolia, the tendency to see patterns where none exist, but as distinct, complex formations that multiple witnesses independently describe in the same way. For centuries, these accounts were dismissed as superstition or the product of minds under extreme stress. Until the development of high-speed, high-resolution wave imaging technology began capturing formations that defy conventional explanation. In 2007, researchers studying wave dynamics in the North Sea recorded a sequence of images showing a 60-foot wave whose breaking crest formed what unmistakably resembles a human face in profile, complete with eye, nose, mouth, and what appears to be a crown or headdress. The formation maintained its structure for approximately 2.8 seconds before dissipating, long enough to be captured in multiple sequential images from different angles. Fluid dynamics experts confirm that the formation couldn't be explained by normal wave mechanics, which don't create or maintain such complex, recognizable patterns during the chaotic process of wave breaking. Similar formations have been documented in various storm-prone areas of the world's oceans, particularly in the North Atlantic, the Bay of Bengal, and off the coast of South Africa. What makes these face waves particularly mysterious isn't just their appearance, but their reported behavior. Unlike normal rogue waves, which form and break according to predictable physical principles, these formations often appear to target specific vessels, changing course, or even subdividing to pursue ships, attempting to evade them. As if they possess not just form but intention. Conventional oceanography offers no explanation for how waves could form such complex, recognizable patterns or exhibit what appears to be directed behavior. Some researchers suggest these might represent rare but natural interactions between multiple wave systems, creating momentary patterns that human perception interprets as faces due to our innate tendency to recognize facial features. Others propose they could be the result of electromagnetic influences on water structure, perhaps related to little understood interactions between storms and the Earth's magnetic field. But neither explanation accounts for the consistency of the patterns observed or the apparently intentional behavior reported by numerous independent witnesses. Some oceanographers and folklore researchers have proposed more speculative theories. The possibility that these formations might represent a form of emergence in complex fluid systems, moments when the ocean briefly organizes itself into higher-order patterns that mimic aspects of consciousness or identity. Others suggest they could be manifestations of collective human projection, the accumulated mythic imagery of centuries of maritime culture temporarily taking physical form under certain extreme conditions. Whatever their nature, these face waves remain one of the ocean's most haunting and personal mysteries. A phenomenon that challenges not just our understanding of wave dynamics, but our basic assumptions about the boundary between mindless natural forces and systems that appear to manifest aspects of mind or identity. A reminder that the sea sometimes seems to look back at those who sail upon it, wearing expressions that range from serenity to rage, communicating through form what cannot be spoken in words. As we near the end of our journey through the ocean's greatest mysteries, let's explore what might be the most fundamental enigma of all, the question of whether the ocean itself might possess a form of consciousness. Throughout human history, across vastly different cultures and time periods, there has been a persistent intuition that the sea is not merely a collection of water molecules operating according to mindless physical laws, but something more, an entity with purpose, awareness, and perhaps even intention. For centuries, these ideas were relegated to the realm of mythology, poetry, or primitive animism, until advances in complex systems theory, integrated information theory, and our understanding of emergent properties began raising profound questions about how consciousness itself arises and what systems might potentially support it. In 2020, a multidisciplinary research team published a controversial paper examining the theoretical possibility of ocean consciousness from a scientific perspective. They noted that the ocean possesses many characteristics that some theories associate with conscious systems: massive complexity, integrated information processing across multiple scales, homeostatic self-regulation, adaptive response to changing conditions, and even a form of memory in its current patterns that are influenced by previous states. While stopping short of claiming the ocean is definitively conscious, they argued that we cannot scientifically rule out the possibility that such a vast, complex system might generate emergent properties that could be analogous to what we experience as awareness. What makes this question particularly compelling isn't just its philosophical implications, but the consistent subjective reports from those who spend their lives on or in the sea. Long-distance sailors, deep-sea divers, and indigenous maritime peoples often describe experiences of communication with the ocean itself, moments when the boundary between individual human consciousness and the larger awareness of the sea seems to temporarily dissolve. Conventional science offers several frameworks for thinking about these possibilities. Some researchers in the field of panpsychism suggest that consciousness might be a fundamental property of matter itself, existing in different forms and degrees throughout the physical world, with the ocean representing one of the most complex and integrated physical systems on our planet. Others propose more emergent models, suggesting that while the individual components of the ocean aren't conscious, the system as a whole might generate properties that functionally resemble aspects of mind when operating at sufficient scales of complexity and integration. But both approaches acknowledge the fundamental limitation of our inquiry. How would we recognize a form of consciousness so radically different from our own? A mind operating on timescales of centuries rather than seconds, distributed across billions of cubic miles rather than contained within a skull, processing information through chemical and physical dynamics rather than neural networks. Perhaps the most profound aspect of this mystery is that it may be fundamentally unsolvable, not because the answer doesn't exist, but because the question itself transcends our capacity to fully formulate it. We can only approach the ocean's potential consciousness through the limitations of our human understanding, inevitably projecting our own concepts of mind onto a system that, if aware, would be aware in ways we might never fully comprehend. And yet, when we stand at the shore or float upon the waves, looking out at that vast blue expanse, many of us can't shake the feeling that something is looking back. That we are in the presence of not just a what, but a who, ancient, patient, and operating according to purposes we've only begun to glimpse. Whether this represents objective reality or human projection remains one of the greatest mysteries, not just of the ocean, but of consciousness itself. A question that hovers at the boundary between science and philosophy, between the measurable and the ineffable. A reminder that perhaps the deepest mystery isn't what lies beneath the waves, but what the waves themselves might be in their fundamental nature. As we come to the end of our journey through the ocean's darkest mysteries, I want to thank you for staying with me through these hours of exploration. The sea covers over 70% of our planet, yet in many ways it remains more alien and unknown than the surface of Mars. A world of darkness and pressure, of creatures that defy imagination, of phenomena that challenge our most basic understanding of how reality works. In exploring these mysteries, we're not just indulging our fascination with the strange and unexplained, we're acknowledging the humbling truth that for all our technological advancement, for all our scientific understanding, we remain surrounded by wonder and enigma. The ocean reminds us that the universe is not just stranger than we imagine, but stranger than we can imagine. It teaches us that no matter how much we learn, there will always be depths we haven't plumbed, secrets we haven't uncovered, questions we haven't even thought to ask. And perhaps that's the greatest gift the ocean offers us, not just its resources or its beauty, but its endless capacity to evoke awe and mystery. To remind us that we live in a world still filled with the unknown, the unexplained, the wonderfully mysterious. So as you drift off to sleep tonight, maybe thinking about the strange creatures and phenomena we've explored together, remember this. The ocean's mysteries aren't just tales to entertain or terrify. They're invitations to wonder, to question, to remember how vast and strange our world truly is. And how lucky we are to live on a planet where the impossible sometimes becomes real, where ancient secrets wait in the darkness, and where the greatest adventures of discovery still lie ahead of us. Thank you for diving into the depths with me tonight. May your dreams be filled with wonder rather than fear, with the shimmering possibility of what might exist in those vast, unexplored waters that cover most of our blue planet. And perhaps, somewhere in those dreams, you might hear the ocean whispering its own stories, its own mysteries, its own truths that we're only beginning to understand. Sleep well, brave listener. And remember, the abyss is still looking back,